Join us on the Path Radio Mix online. And to get there, type in thepathradio.com. That's thepathradio.com. And enjoy free streaming music all day long. That's it. thepathradio.com. All right, now let's get to the main show, the Monthly Social Podcast, with me, your host, Guido Perino, as you go on with Guido. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the month of love here on the Monthly Social. We are in February. Happy Valentine's Day. We're going to spend some time with Canadian country music star Elyse Saunders as she helps us get famous and free. Then we talk with Dr. Bolad, our experienced cardiologist, as we cover heart health and heart disease. Next, we're joined by Paul Pinchbeck, the president and CEO of Ski Canada. We'll learn about skiing, snowboarding, safety, conditions, and a whole lot more. And we'll close out the show with part 2 of our series on horrors from Intact Auto Insurance. Of course, there's love sprinkled throughout the show, so stay tuned for those tidbits. Now let's go. Now, before we get going, a quick word from one of our friends of the podcast, Johnny Prosciutto. Johnny Prosciutto, artisanal Italian homemade products. We make it like our grandfather, or as we say, Nonno. Naturally cured, old-fashioned, and delicious. Order online at johnnyprosciutto.com, and we deliver right to your front door, where the only thing left for you to do is enjoy it with your friends and family. That's johnnyprosciutto.com. I enjoy a little Johnny Prosciutto. Cut up a little bit of the cacciatore sausage and sit down and watch one of my favorite shows or sporting events. Nice little snack to have, or even at the supper table. So reach over to my friend Anthony over at johnnyprosciutto.com, and he'll take care of you. So it's February, and it doesn't matter what month it is. Sometimes we love to talk about the weather. It's too hot. It's too cold. There's too much snow. There's too much rain. And I was thinking, maybe we have some phobias when it comes to weather. I wonder what, if you're afraid of the cold, would you have a phobia, or what's it called? And there's a few different names for it. One is called frigophobia. If you're afraid of the cold, you have frigophobia. If you're afraid of moisture, hygrophobia. If you're afraid of extreme cold, frost, or ice, cryophobia. I guess you would cry. It's cold, it's frosty, it's icy. I like the ice. We skate on the ice. If you're afraid of floods, antlophobia. It almost sounds like you're afraid of ants, not of floods. Antlophobia. We've had some foggy days. If you're afraid of the fog, nebulaphobia. Ooh, a little bit of Star Trek there. If you're afraid of the rain, ombraphobia. Ombraphobia, if you're afraid of the rain. And it's winter. So look, if you're afraid of the snow, chionophobia. Yeah. Chionophobia, if you're afraid of the snow. Well, like the weather, I've got a lot of different scenarios here for you today with the show, as I did in the introduction. I have been busy. There's a lot of work going on outside the podcast. Thepathradio.com revamped the entire programming schedule there. If you like music and audio content, check that out. If you're into sports, we've been posting some YouTube videos on thecoachescall.com. I'll have those links in the podcast notes. But let's get this show going. I got a lot of information, some fantastic guests, great music, a lot of tidbits for you. Thanks for being here. Let's go! I would like to welcome to the show rising Canadian country artist and 2-time Country Music Awards Ontario nominee, joining us from Toronto, Ontario, Elyse Saunders. Elyse, welcome to the show.
Hi, Guido. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for being here. And I must ask, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing so good now that I'm on here.
Thank you. I'm going to use that soundbite over and over. So look, Elyse, I just so folks know, I got to know here. You are Peterborough, Ontario homegrown, and I think we're talking home of the Pete's, Lock 21, pubs and parties, Jackson Park, and lots more. So I want to shout out to Peterborough, but that's right. That's your hometown, right?
Yeah, shout out Peterborough, Ontario. Yeah, it's such a cool place to have grown up, and we've had a ton of different artists and music come out of Peterborough, strangely enough. But yeah, a beautiful place to have grown up.
I haven't been there in a long time now. I used to go there quite a bit. But what's your favorite thing about your hometown?
So Peterborough does have a really cool culture with different shops, and the downtown part is pretty fun, like you mentioned. But I've always really loved the Kawartha Lakes that are surrounding Peterborough, and being able to visit friends at cottages and camping. I'm a big fan of that, just being out at the lake. Stony Lake, Clear Lake are some of the big ones. But definitely my favorite spot in Peterborough, and brings back a lot of memories for me, is Dale Curry Park with the Peterborough Music Fest stage there. I grew up seeing so many different amazing acts coming in through Peterborough, and they put on this open, free concert for everybody in the community, and there's like thousands upon thousands, like 10,000 people show up to this thing. And yeah, they've had the best of the best. And since I was a little girl, I've seen all different types of acts. And I used to always think that'd be so cool to be able to play on that stage one day. And I have memories of being there with my dad and my brother, and we'd run around on the stage when it was off season. And yeah, I've recently in my career been able to get to play there. So I have a lot of fun memories, and definitely, I think that was one of my biggest probably influences really early on, just seeing that stage and being a part of that.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to envision, little girl Elyse running up to the stage while some singers are singing it way back when you were a little girl, right? But how was that? So later you're on that stage and you're looking out. And do you have memories like when you were on that stage? Did you do any flashbacks or anything? Or
Oh my gosh, totally. And I had the opportunity to perform for the very first time on that stage. I was only, like 16 years old. I was super new to the scene at that time, and I think at most had played to maybe 500 people, like a handful of shows. And I was working with a producer, Cyril Rawson, who's from the area and really connected to Nashville. And he had a friend coming to town, Derek Rattan, who a lot of people know. And he was like, I have this, amazing up and coming artist from the area, and she'd love to open for you. And I had that opportunity to play in front of 10,000 people. So I was scared because I obviously had no experience with that, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But I told myself, if I can do this, then I can make a career of this. And I did it, and it was the best feeling in the world. It felt like that was my home, and I've been doing it ever since. And then I guess this year was a full circle moment because Music Fest was celebrating 35 years, their anniversary, and they had me back with Sean Austin this year. So yeah, like I say, a big part of who I am is that stage.
Surreal, completely surreal. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's the craziest feeling in the world to be able to do that. It's such an adrenaline rush, but for me, I feel like that is my purpose. I've always loved music since I can remember, but I feel like performing is a big part of my purpose. It's just I feel like it brings so many people together in that moment.
Now you're on that stage, you have those memories, you have these surreal moments now. You're looking out into the audience. Do you see any little girls or little boys looking at you the way that you looked at the stars when you were growing up?
Yes, I run into them all the time at different shows, and they're the most adorable. I love kids just in general, just because they have such a light spirit, and just to see them feel music for the first time is such a neat thing to see. And some of them I'll be talking to them and they're like, yeah, I want to be a singer when I grow up. So I always make sure to let them know to follow their dreams, because I'm living proof of that. You can do it. You can follow whatever you love to do, and you can make something happen of it.
So Elyse, we're talking about kids, we're talking about family. You mentioned your dad and talking about roots. When it comes to country music, was there someone in your family who influenced your love for it in any way? Is there a story behind your country roots beyond that stage in Peterborough?
So I've always loved all kinds of music just because of, I guess, my parents also being music lovers and listening to whatever they were playing at the time. But country music in particular, for the longest time in Peterborough, we only had a country music station. So I feel like you're just surrounded by it and just the lifestyle of the
Mhm.
area. My mom, though, had a big influence as a songwriter for me when I was really young. I wrote my first song when I was like 4 or 5 because of her. She was this, this hobby writer, and she would always have her guitar out, be playing in the kitchen, and I would kind of go through her guitar case when she wasn't looking, and I'd pull out these lyrics, and I just thought that was so cool to be able to express yourself that way. So I would say that she had the biggest influence on me as an artist that way, and just trying to express yourself, and then country music, I feel like just naturally fell into where I fit as a person. Like I say, I love all music, and I think you can hear that in my music that I'm not super confined to a box, but country music is my home and who I am as a person.
Yeah, and we're going to get to hear some of your songs today and on our affiliate radio station, thepathradio.com. And yeah, you definitely, like, for folks who are going to listen who haven't had a chance to hear you yet, and they're going to become fans of yours once they do, you just have that country foundation, I think is what it is. And then you definitely veer out into some different pockets, if you will, some different musical pockets that I think will draw different casual fans into the songs. So we're going to look forward to that. I want to ask you, when you hear me or anybody else introduce you as a Canadian country star, does having that Canadian in front of that mean anything more special to you? Or, and the alternative is, do you in any way feel pressure that you are a Canadian, rising Canadian country star, that you need to do something different because you are Canadian, right? And we tend to, put our performers and our talents in a box when they're Canadian, especially here, right in the country. So, are there any thoughts around that?
I feel like I have both sides to that because I'm proud to be Canadian. I love everything that we are as Canada, and we've had some of the best acts come out of Canada, like Justin Bieber, The Weeknd, and of course Canadian country star Shania Twain. So that's pretty cool. So I love all of that, but the same side of things, I've been going to Nashville for many, many years as a country artist, and I've seen it expand so much. But I know that as Canadians, our culture is a little bit different than maybe like Southern American culture, and so I feel like we've kind of had to prove our place, I guess, in country music, just because we're a little bit different, maybe culturally, but we're neighbors. So obviously, at the same time, we share the same stories when it comes down to it. When you break it all down, the foundation is that we all share the same stories, we go through the same experiences. So I think more and more we're seeing these collaborations with music, and music is kind of expanding across borders in so many ways, which I love. And I guess where I feel pressure is I don't want to be judged because I have the name Canadian country artist, that I'm different than any other country artist, I guess. But what I do like about it is I feel like maybe I can come from a different angle just because there's slight cultural differences. But I think it's a good thing. We can all bring these different sides to country music and have fun with it. And I never want to feel like I'm confined to a box. No matter where I am in my career, I want to be able to have fun and express and try new things.
It is exciting. And for me, when I introduced you as a Canadian country star, and I was worried about that. I was worried about putting you in the box. And that's why I kind of asked the question, just to kind of make sure, because sometimes we put the spotlight on our artists and our talents. So I'm glad that you're able to expand and say to us, hey, look, I want to be on this level playing field. I'm proud to be Canadian though, right? So that's
Yeah.
good. Listen, you said, you talked about the Kawartha Lakes, and we're talking about Peterborough. And for anybody who doesn't know the area, Highway 115 is the highway to get to Toronto, right? So you found a home in Toronto, and you had to take the 115. It's a highway that there's these sections, and it's got these hills, and back in the early days of the cell phone, if you went down the hill, you'd lose the cell phone connection and come
It
back up
still
the hill and you'd
happens.
get, it's still happening. Even I told you it's been a while. So even with the smartphones, it still happens.
Yes, it still happens, which I'm surprised about all the time.
So sad, so sad. Because yeah, I'll be right back, and then you come back up the hill. But so you're taking the 115. You make it to Toronto. Now, not a lot of people might think country music when they think Toronto. So how did Peterborough country girl, cowgirl boots, hats, and music work for you in the 416?
So my parents are separated and they have been for a long time. So I always kind of spent 50% of my time in Peterborough, where I grew up. And then when my parents separated, my dad lived in the Mississauga, Ontario area. So I really got to know both worlds through that, and was influenced also by, well, heavily, I should say, by the Mississauga, Ontario community, because their music scene is big as well, and all genres of music, which I love. And I was highly influenced by their live entertainment scene, and just getting onto these stages with all these different artists from different genres, and sharing my songs and my music with their audiences really early on. So it's kind of happened organically, I guess, just through that. And I would say that when I first made the move officially from Peterborough to the GTA, it was definitely a big jump for me. And I realized how quick everybody moves compared to Peterborough. It's a lot faster lifestyle was the biggest thing I noticed. But what I really love about being somewhere a little bit more central is I have that flexibility. I can go wherever I need to go, because country music is, surrounding the GTA. So it's perfect because I can get there in half the time. So, yeah, it just allows me to be able to go where I need to go. But, yeah, I would say my music has been influenced just by those experiences of being this country girl, but also city girl at the same time.
So it's just there's a couple of interesting things to this. So when I first moved to the GTA, I came from a small town as well. I'm from Sault Ste. Marie, and people who listen to the show know I talk about Sault Ste. Marie a lot. But I came and I didn't even know what a subway. I had never really been on a subway train, and so I'm on a subway and learning all these things, and it was like, wow, this is pretty cool. But my perception from years ago about Toronto was not country music.
No.
And people who don't live here even today that I talk to in some different pockets around Ontario and other parts of the country don't think of Toronto as country music. They think of country, or they think of it as a hip hop dance, pop type of community. Did you think doing country in the GTA would be a challenge in terms of attracting a crowd, or is that something that you kind of said, well, I kind of grew into it? Was there an initial concern, or did you just go, no, the crowds are there and this is what it is, and there is a big country community?
Yeah, I just kind of went with it. I didn't really know what was going to happen, especially just because it was so early on. I was just open to all these different experiences and trying to find as many stages as I could, and finding my pocket of people, I guess, and finding my tribe of country music followers. And Toronto, I find, has become a lot more open to country music. Just because the genre has grown so much and there's all these modern sounds now. And there was some really cool country bars that popped up, and I've played at them, and some of them have come and gone. But yeah, no matter where you are, I feel like there's always country music fans. They'll always show up, and they're always the rowdiest.
Yes, I've been to a few of those fun, rowdy shows. So yeah, so if your perception out there of Toronto is it really country town? It is. There's a lot of country happening, and like Elyse, right? You talked about, or very early on when we first started talking, you mentioned Nashville, and you've been out to Nashville, and you talked also about, hey, when I was on that stage in Peterborough, and things were kind of surreal, and we watch the journey of artists as things evolve for them. What were your first thoughts when you arrived and said to yourself, hey, self, I'm in Nashville, right? Like, did it phase you in any way? Did it change you, knowing that you were going to Nashville to do some recordings and that, you were taking that path?
was an incredible experience because I hadn't done a lot of traveling at that point. So it was a really big trip for me in general. And I had no expectations of Nashville. I feel like when I heard about Nashville and you hear about the country music stars, you're thinking, oh, glitz and glam. It's going to be these big buildings with all these, big music execs and people walking around. But when I got to Nashville, it's way more humble and way more down to earth than that. And I guess that was the biggest thing that stood out to me, which I love about it. And it's so real. And I feel like that's what drew me to this genre in the first place, is just that people are so down to earth and real and you can be yourself. And a lot of these big studios that have these huge artists and musicians coming out of them are people's houses that have been turned into studios. So I thought that was the biggest thing when I went there. And it really gave me a perspective of what I was working with. And obviously coming from Peterborough, Ontario, my world is small at that point. So this kind of really opened it all up and set the bar for where I wanted to go. And I knew, I was working with some amazing people really early on. So I feel like they all set the bar high for me. And I've had this high expectation for myself ever since, and just working with the pros and seeing how they work there. And they're just great people, but also so pro at the same time.
Did it change your music, your approach to music, or your style in any way? Did you feel a Nashville influence in any way?
So because I've been going back and forth there, I try to go at least once a year. I do want to make a habit of going more often, and I am looking at the thought of moving there at some point. But the biggest thing has been, I guess, the evolution of me as a writer. I've been going back and forth and just writing with as many people as I can. And I feel like that's really influenced me as a writer, just by working with people that I've really looked up to, and just storytelling. I feel like that's been the biggest thing for me, is becoming a bigger writer, just because they have the best writers in there and the storytellers. And you can go to writers' rounds and get out, or just watch some music on the strip, or you meet somebody at a bar and you're like, all right, let's work together. And everybody's willing to, work together and build this community. And it all happens really quick. But you learn so much. And storytelling and the way I write, I would say, was so influenced by Nashville. And I feel like, yeah, I'm definitely a little bit more of the Nashville writer.
Now, when you talk about influences and you talk about meeting people, we like to do this a lot, but do you get compared to any other country music star more than anyone than any other one? Or do you even compare yourself or your style to anyone, having gone through your evolution?
So I would say with my music, I feel like I don't really fit in with like somebody was like, oh, you sound exactly like so and so. I feel like my music, you can hear the different influences maybe, but I feel like I kind of have my own sound going on. But to, I guess, give people an idea, I think it's important to say, well, my music fits in with like a Miranda Lambert, Carrie Underwood, Maren Morris sort of thing, Shania Twain. And that gives them a good idea going in. They get to know you kind of right off the bat, if you can say that. But yeah, I don't know if I fit in with a specific person. I'm told I sound a lot like Sheryl Crow vocally, an amazing singer. But yeah, I've kind of found my own niche, I think.
I think you do. So when, again, I go back to, I was listening to your songs, and you do have your own sound, and that's where I get excited about your sound. Do you even think comparisons are necessary sometimes? Like, when we do that, media, we tend to say, oh, they sound like, or this song is very similar to, and then I always think, when you do that, are you really doing, like, do we need to do that? Right? Because I listen now and I go, that's Elyse Saunders, right? That's Elyse Saunders sound. And I don't think of anyone else, but is it a necessary thing?
I feel like yes and no, because I think as the fan or the first time listener, I think they like to know if they're discovering new music. They like to know that there's some familiarity. I like this artist, and if this artist kind of fits in with that style, I like it. But I think it's hard as an artist if you're trying to create music for yourself and your fans, especially as somebody that's rising in the scene. I find that the comparison thing is a bit damaging, and I've had it myself, especially I feel like as a female artist in the country music world, our music styles, we have to prove ourselves a little bit more maybe than the male side of things. And I've been told, oh, you sound like so-and-so and so-and-so, so we can't play it. It's like, well, I've heard males that sound like so and so and so and so, but you play them. So it's really about just creating your own path and finding your audience, and eventually it's going to stick, I feel like.
Elyse, tell me a little bit more about that. You just mentioned the whole male and female side of the business. Is it harder as a woman breaking into the music or even country scene, or just in general? Do you find some of any challenges with that?
I think the country music genre has been stuck in a bit of style of music for a while. And in the 90s, the females were killing it. I would say equal playing ground, males and females were killing it. And then we kind of went through a phase where country music was changing as an industry and society and the way people were listening to music. And I think labels were really struggling for a long time because of streaming and trying to find their grounds with that. So the market was really focusing on making music for the festival scene. And then these males that I would say had a certain kind of sound, which is that summer festival sound, started to really come out. And I think that's amazing. And like I say, I love performing live. So I think it's good to have that fun, upbeat music. And I think we just kind of been stuck in that. And country music is evolving, but I think the females have had to really, really work a little bit harder to like stick out and say, I'm here, like I'm over here, I'm proving myself, I've done all the work, like I have an audience and I'm putting out music. So I would say, because I've been an independent artist from the very beginning, and now I'm getting into this point where I have a package and I'm expanding my team, but I've really been able to see firsthand the whole progress that it takes to be an artist, but especially seeing the side of a female. And it motivates me. I'm definitely a hard worker, and I feel like that's where I stand out. It's just because I have a lot of drive, and I think that's important for any artist. But right now, if I can get through the scene because of my drive, I'll be proud of that.
Well, Elyse Saunders, you are definitely here, and I think that when I see what you're doing with your music and your approach and everything, I have daughters. And I want them to have role models like you and what you're doing, and I think it's very important. And I think you're definitely providing that for a lot of young girls. So hopefully they'll listen to the show and even use that and get even more motivation. Now, I want to talk about your.
It.
Oh, you're welcome. Very welcome. I want to talk a little bit about your music and your EP. You decided to put together an EP. The title of it is Free. I know this sounds like a bit of a generalist question, but you talked about writing and the process, and what was the journey to the EP actually happening? Like, you wake up one morning and say, I'm going to put together, but you have all these pieces to it, and we're going to talk about them. But what was the journey to the EP?
So I had released an album pretty early on. And that was when I was mentioning my first trips to Nashville and working with producer Cyril Rawson at the time. And that was my big resume to the world, and stepping up as a teen and saying, I want to do this as a professional. So I did that, and I got some amazing things that came out of it. But then I also realized that I personally wanted to really focus on my development as a person, my development as an entertainer, songwriter, and singer, just become even stronger than what I was. And so I spent a number of years just going back and forth between Nashville, writing and doing as many shows as I could. And I had this whole pile of songs that I had been building, and there were certain songs that were really standing out where I was like, okay, I would love to record this, but I'm going to wait till I have the right team, I have the right funds together so that I can make these songs as best as they can be. So that's where the EP first came from, and I was ready to do it. And then it's interesting. It was like, I'm ready to create this, and then all the pieces started to come together. My team, and we got Factor Canada funding, Creative BC. So all of these pieces came together to be able to actually record this EP, but not only record it, but to market it and to get to the point I am now. And it was definitely a career-changing EP for me. And I think it's just because there was all the momentum and growth leading up to it, and then I was able to just, drop the mic, or boom, here's the EP. So Yeah, free. And free is just really, I would say, capturing where I'm at in my career as an artist, and all the confident messages, and just being free to be able to express myself at this point.
I was going to say, so tell us a little bit about, you titled the EP Free, and there's a song Free. So was there a tie back? And it seems like there is. One thing I heard in what you just said, though, I think is an incredible message, is you had a sense of an awareness when it came to your material and purpose, where you said, yeah, I've got this stuff, and we often rush to get things out. We rush because we're so excited, but you pulled back the reins, right? See the reference there, pulled back the reins. No, I'm getting quirky. But you pulled back the reins a little bit, and you said sense of awareness, and to say, I'm going to do these steps. I'm not just going to rush this through. And it sounds like it paid off in terms of the final product that you put out there. It's something you're very proud of. Elyse, you have 6 songs on Free. Free, Sunshine State of Mind, Wind Down, Famous, Jeans, and California. We're going to hear 3 of those songs throughout the rest of the show today when folks listen. So, I'm hoping that folks are going to enjoy that. But if you had a choice, and we talked about new fans, if you had a choice for someone who's never heard your music before, and they could only listen to one song, of those songs, of that group of songs, which one would you say we would wish that they could hear, and why would it be that song?
That's super hard for me because I feel like they're all my babies. So it's really hard. I would say if I had to pick one song to encompass the EP, it would have to be Free, just because it's the title track. And I feel like it represents the entire vision and the entire energy of what this EP was supposed to be. It would have to be Free. Jeans, I feel like it really represents me as an artist, and with this strong, confident message of being confident in exactly who you are and celebrating people for who they are. But Free, I guess, with it being the title track, it has to be that one.
So I wanna ask you, and you alluded to this. You talked about themes. You talked about Free now. We've become quite accustomed to artists releasing a single, right? You release one single, then you release another single. But when you put out an EP, when you have this collection, when you put them all together, does the whole EP tell a story? Are these songs interconnected?
Yeah, for me, they are. They're all, people will hear when they're listening, they're all a little bit different from each other, which was purposeful. I was working with 2 different producers at the time, Dan Swinimer, and also a duo producer team, Paul Chateau and David Wills. And I wanted to be able to show some of the different sides to me as an artist, because I had taken a step back. I really wanted to show people my growth and the different sides to me as a person. And you can hear that with something like Wind Down, which is a lot more broken down, intimate, a little bit more of maybe the country root side. And then something like Free has a influence of I would say even like dance music with that drop chorus. So and being my background, I played so many different country clubs to the university college crowd. So I'm used to that high energy crowd. So to show something like Free and then Wind Down, it's just, you get to see the different sides to me. So they all tell a story. I didn't want it to be this static sound. I wanted it to all be kind of related in the sense it's me, Elyse, the artist, the person. But these are my stories, and they're all empowering messages at the same time. I want to be able to put out music that makes people feel joy when they're listening. It makes them feel inspired and empowered. Yeah, self-empowered.
I love an album journey. It's one of my favorite things about, listening to an album end to end, is following that journey. The latest release from your Free EP is a song called Famous. And, I'm going to say I call it a real boot stomping, up tempo, red solo cup, outdoor party, or it's got on the dance floor swag. And I don't know if I'm capturing everything I feel when I listen to that song or everything I interpret. Maybe I didn't capture that, but it's just one of those songs that you heard me say things like The Sound or The Pocket. If folks haven't seen the video of that, it's a must see. I love the video of it too. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about the video shoot. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
love your description, by the way, of it. That's awesome.
Yeah, you know what? It just like I was at first I listened to it and then I watched the video and I just, I was trying to capture it and I'm like, it's just there's so much going on and it's so cool and there's so many to me there's so many different messages in it. There's a main message I think, but there's so many different messages in it. So and I thought, yeah, like we could be outside, I could be on the dance floor, like it just that's how it made me feel. And maybe as an artist, that's cool for you, right? Like that you want to know how it makes people feel, right? But where was the video shot?
So it was shot in Mississauga, Ontario at this
cool.
beautiful mansion. And I found it on a website that allows people to be able to take their homes and they can rent it out for movies or music videos. Wow. So yeah, it just happened to be Mississauga. It wasn't on purpose, but it was meant to be, I guess.
Now, are the folks in the video, are they friends of yours?
Yes, they are. So the main character is a friend that I met when I was a restaurant server part-time. She's just so fun and she's an incredible actor. So I was waiting for the right video to have her in because I wanted her to be the main feature. She has so much sass. So I was like, you are the perfect one for my main character. And then the others are friends as well. And in all my videos, you're going to see friends. And some of them are actors, some of them are friends, but everybody is friends in the end. So
that's awesome. So I was hoping the answer was yes, and it makes me happy to hear that they are. Now, who came up with the concept for that video, or in general, any of your videos? Is that a team effort? Is that something that you start out with, or?
So all of my videos, so since I was young, I've always been creating videos with whatever camera we had at the time. I've been this little creator, like creating movies and music videos and having this big grand vision of whatever I wanted to capture. So I feel like now as an adult, I get to actually do that. So I work with an amazing team, Roadhouse Productions, who are also my friends, and they're so great at capturing my vision. And we'll sit down and I'll say, this is exactly how I see it. And then I go through all the logistics of finding the actors, friends, the location. I love doing it. I'll just find all the pieces, the props, everything that goes to it. And originally when we were looking at Famous in the video, it was supposed to be a different concept, but what it came down to, just because this was the last song that we were promoting to radio from the EP and we were doing a music video, it actually came down to a budget problem. So I couldn't do the original plan I had. So I was like, okay, let's break this down. We're going to make this like a dream world. So it was different than the original version, but it ended up being just as fun. And like you said, I think that's what's cool about a song, any song really, but Famous and the style of song it is, you could take it in so many different directions. So we ended up going with this dream world that this average girl, like myself, like we're these average people with these big dreams, and she had this vision of what she thought was famous in her mind, and she was taken to that world from a dream. So, well, in the end, you don't know if it was a dream, but
you portray it, like you pop in the video, your outfit pops in the video, so you portray it perfectly. And I don't want to give too much away because if folks haven't seen it, I want them to go see it. But it was just perfect. And it's a fun video. And, the other thing, and I didn't realize this, but as you're telling me these things, I think one of the key important things, like sometimes you can tell, like when artists make videos, you have some, it sounds like some deep relationships with the people you're working with to make those videos. And sometimes that helps make things seamless and makes things, more organic. So when you're watching it, it just got so much flow and everybody's having fun and it's just like this thing is happening, right? So anyways, we'll leave that for folks. We're gonna have some links where folks can get to that and they can watch it and they're gonna enjoy that. I want to also ask you, you've been nominated twice for the Country Music Awards Ontario. CMAO Ontario has now been around since 2007. You were first nominated in 2021 as Female Artist of the Year and Rising Star, then again in 2022 for Album of the Year, which is your free album, and Video of the Year, Sunshine State of Mind. So first, that video, do you know why or what made that video get its nomination? Do you have any insider scoop on that or?
think it was just the progress of all these different videos coming out, and I'm not sure what it was about that one that people, I guess,
Yeah.
really loved, but yeah, I think, well, all of these nominations, I feel like they're never expected because I've been on the other side for so long that I've always had a dream to be nominated for my music because well, for one, it tells me I'm doing something right in my career. So that's good. Thumbs up for that. But it's a great feeling just to know that my peers are believing in what I do and to now be on that side of it. So the video, I think it was just it felt like you say organic, and I think the fact that I work with my friends and we have a great time doing it, I feel like people feel that, and when they're watching it, for me, it's always been really important that when they watch a video, that it captures the song, but also it's like they're kind of living the moment as if it's almost an experience for them. So with all my videos, I try to create an experience, and I hope that that's what people love about it.
So probably that it's relatable to them and they can connect with it is what I think in that case, and in some of your other ones is probably where we're going with that a little bit, eh?
Yeah, I would think so. Is if they can relate it to their story, that's the biggest thing,
Yeah.
and it feels real to them.
You touched on it just a little bit, but are the nominations important to you?
They are like I say, they're never expected. It's just a great feeling though when it does happen because it means that people believe in what you're doing. And I feel like I've worked, like I say, as an independent so hard for so many years. So just to have that, it's kind of like gives you the perspective of where you're at in your career, being surrounded by other friends that are being nominated in the same categories.
So what's coming up for Elyse Saunders in 2023? Are we going to see you on tour? Are you working on any new music? Are you taking a break?
We have new music. It's being edited in the studio right now, and I'll be recording 2 more songs this summer. So I'm making a trip to Nashville very soon, just to write a ton and see if we can get 2 more bangers on the list. And then we'll be doing a ton of shows. I'm expanding my team, which I'm really excited about, but I can't talk about yet. But taking everything to the next level, which is what I'm really excited about because then we can reach more and more people with my music. And then this week I'm packing and getting ready because I'll be going on an exciting trip. I'll be meeting my dad and stepmom with my boyfriend. We're going to Bahamas, which is neat. My dad always had this dream of selling everything and buying a sailboat. He has a 35-foot sailboat, vintage sailboat that he did all this work on. And we're basically going to be living on this boat in Bahamas for 2 weeks, which is crazy, unique. Haven't done it yet, so this will be a fun experience, and I'll definitely be documenting so people can follow along.
How exciting. Are you gonna post like to Instagram and things like that, or?
Yeah, I have no idea exactly what I'm going to get yet. I might try to get my brother's GoPro so we can get some underwater shots and just try to capture little pieces of what's happening there. And then I'll share it, yeah, on Instagram, TikTok, all the socials.
Exciting. We're going to see that. And breaking news that you're working on new music. We're going to have new music this summer. So that's exciting too.
I'm so excited. Yeah,
this is awesome.
This music, I would say, because the other stuff I had been working on, I feel like for so long, this is another chapter, I guess, to me as a writer and an artist. And it's going to be relatable in what I've already put out, but it's exciting just because it's new music and new stories to share. So
I'm going to wonder as you're, on the big boat in the Bahamas, if you're going to get inspired and write music while you're there too. And
I'm sure I will.
Something.
Yeah, I feel like these trips always help with that because you get into that state of just being, well, there's the word free, just like free. And yeah, then it starts to come when you're in that relaxed state. So I'm excited for that too, to come back inspired.
Elyse, it's been a pleasure having you with us today. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I'm going to let you go. You got some packing to do. I know that, but is there anything else you'd like to leave us with before you go?
Well, thank you once again, Guido, for having me on your show. It's a big honor. I love everything that you're doing on the monthly social. So it's so exciting for me to be here with you. And thank you to anybody that has taken the time to listen and be a part of the story, be a part of the journey. If we've just met, I hope that you'll follow along on all the socials and I'll see you at a show soon.
She is free, and that is rising Canadian country music star Elyse Saunders. Thank you for joining us and sharing your music with us today. Folks, you can get your Elyse Saunders music and really cool country swag on ElyseSaunders.com. As usual, I'll have all of her links in the podcast notes. Now, let's go listen to a song from Elyse Saunders, the title track from her EP. Here is Free.
Too young to go to a bar, but old enough for sneaking out. Under the stars, salt in the air, tequila sunrise. Lost in the moment, living our best life. Barefoot, glow sticks, 4th of July. Skinny dipping in a full moon, shining, shining. Can't stop, won't stop. We were so restless. Looking back now, might have even been reckless. We were young and wild and free, careless like an ocean breeze. No responsibilities. Take me back to wild and free. We were young and wild and free, careless like an ocean breeze. No responsibilities. Take me back to wild and free. Stereo love and sunshine ray banning, copper tone tan line, 6-string jamming, autumn air, harvest sunset, mind stamp moments you'll never forget. Yeah, you'll never forget. We were young and wild and free, careless like an ocean breeze. No responsibilities. Take me back to wild and free. We were young and wild and free, careless like an ocean breeze. No responsibilities. Take me back to wild and free. Time passes by, keep the heart alive, keep the heart alive. We were young and wild and free, careless like an ocean breeze. No responsibilities. Take me back to wild and free. We were young and wild and free, careless like an ocean breeze. No damn responsibilities. Just young and wild and free. Free, young, wild and
That is Elyse Saunders with Free. Stay tuned. We're going to hear more from Elyse a little bit later on in the show, and you don't want to miss those songs. Now, let's get to our next guest. I would like to welcome to the show Dr. Bolad, a triple certified physician, certified by the American Board of Internal Medicine in Cardiology, International Cardiology, and Internal Medicine. Dr. Bolad has over 20 years of experience in cardiology and the management of cardiovascular disease, plus over 30 years of experience as a physician. We're going to cover a bunch of heart health and heart disease with Dr. Bolad today. Welcome to the Monthly Social. Thank you so much for making some time for us to be here today. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me. I am great. It's a great day here. It's winter, but the temperatures today have been on the warm side, which is right now in Indianapolis here, it's 43 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, I think, 6 degrees Celsius. So it's
That's
a good day.
Yeah, and it was a little bit warmer here. I think we may have been in the -6 Celsius range, but still, for this time of year, not too many complaints, I think, Dr.
You can't complain.
Yeah.
You can't complain, right?
You mentioned where you're at in Indiana. So you operate your cardiology clinic in Indiana, USA, and it's the crossroads of America, right?
It is indeed, yeah.
The racing capital of the world. Are you a racing fan?
Well, I like to watch car races, but I'm more like a football fan more than a racing fan, right? Football and basketball.
We're gonna talk football. Yeah, I got a question for you. Are you a longtime resident of Indiana, Dr. Bolad? Or
I have been here for 16 years or 17 years or so. Yeah. So I've been here for a long time. I practice in teaching hospitals downtown Indianapolis, and I treat a variety of patients with cardiology and cardiac disease. So I have been here for a long time. So yeah. Now, I call Indiana home.
You call Indiana home. Now, as a resident of Indiana, you mentioned football and basketball, but what's your favorite thing? What's your favorite thing about Indiana?
Well, personally for me, it's really the culture of the Midwestern states here is great. I like it that where I live here in Indiana, that it's not too busy and it's not too relaxed. It strikes a balance. I like over the sports. I like to watch football, the Colts, although they haven't been doing great over the last few seasons. But we have got a good team. Also, we have got the Pacers for basketball. So we enjoy watching the car races. So it's Indiana is really, to me, I call it home because it really encompasses lots of things that I really like. And also my kids have been brought up here and they call it home as well. Schools are great here in Indiana. And also we have got very good universities. We have got Purdue University. We have got Indiana University. And obviously we have got also Notre Dame University. So we have got very good educational system here, right from schools to colleges, universities. So
Indiana should pay you for that plug that you just did for them, because there's so many good things. Right? People are going to say, yeah, I want to go to Indiana. There's some folks who listen to the show who are I know because I've talked to them. They're fans of the Indiana Colts. So you've got some listeners who are going to be super excited just on that alone.
Excellent.
Yeah. So Dr. Bolad, I'm up here in the Greater Toronto area in Canada. As you said, we've had a mild winter so far, but there was an Arctic blast in December, and I'm actually originally from north of here, much further north, and even north of here, we have some more extreme cold weather. And we're going to talk about heart, but I was curious, are there any heart health risks associated with extreme cold weather that we should worry about? We are going to find out Dr. Bolad's answer to that question right after we hear from one of our friends of the podcast. Here's Richard at Chaser's Juice.
Hi, I'm Richard Chase, introducing Chaser's Fresh Juice, a local business in Toronto. We've been in business for over 20 years, initially supporting our local Toronto area and now servicing all of Canada. Chaser provides fresh organic juices, ingredients including citrus zests, dehydrated garnishes, and fresh citrus peels to enhance any cocktail or recipe you can think of. We have successfully supplied restaurants, distilleries, craft breweries, and bakeries across the country. Reach out to orders@chasersjuice.com for any questions you may have. We are a customized fresh juice company, and I'm sure we can help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, at Chaser's Juice. It is fantastic juice. There's a lot of high-end restaurants and facilities that are serving Chaser's Juice in the Greater Toronto area, and I haven't met anybody who doesn't like it. So check it out, chasersjuice.com. Now, before that break, I had just asked Dr. Bolad about the impact of extreme weather, coldness, on our hearts. Let's find out what he says. Are there any heart health risks associated with extreme cold weather that we should worry about?
Well, actually, I'm glad you asked me about this topic because all what you hear in the news when there is like extreme weather or Arctic weather as we had recently is that accidents can occur, be careful, etc. But the health risks of cold weather, especially for the heart, are under recognized. So deaths can occur very quickly in cold weather from the heart thing. I have published recently a blog on my website about it, and when your body cools down to less than 37 degrees centigrade, the core body temperature, then the metabolism and everything in your body starts to slow down. So between 37 and 35 degrees centigrade, it's like a cold stress. But once you start, your core body temperature starts to drop below 35 degrees, then you start to get into serious organ issues, including heart issues. So below 35 degrees to 32 degrees centigrade, you kind of start to get confused, your body starts to slow, you are shivering, trying to compensate. Once your core temperature drops below 32, then you start to become like unconscious. Consciousness will be affected. The heart becomes very susceptible to arrhythmias, meaning with the slightest thing, slightest fall, slightest injury, you can get ventricular fibrillation in which the heart just quivers and cardiac arrest initiates. So, and if you go temperatures below that, below 28 degrees centigrade, then you are definitely unconscious at that point. And your heart also is very susceptible to arrhythmias. And that's what really kills people most of the time when it goes below that. So there are serious health considerations, including cardiac issues when the temperature drops. So you do in Canada, you use centigrades, right? Is that your temperature scales?
Celsius,
right? Celsius, right? Yeah, I just wanted to make sure for your audience, I'm not using Fahrenheit because lots of people say, what does that mean, right?
Thank you for that consideration. I do appreciate it. Now, what you're talking about with the temperatures, sometimes we talk about hypothermia, right? Like if somebody's in the water, is that what happens to them when hypothermia kicks in? They experience arrhythmia, they experience cardiac arrest. Is that all related?
You're right. So when it drops, it depends on the degree of drop. So if your core body temperature, if it drops like a degree or two, your body can usually compensate. So up to 35 degrees, you can compensate by shivering and trying to warm up.
Right.
But when the temperatures drop and you are exposed for a longer period of time, then you start to get into the issues of reduced consciousness, arrhythmias, etc. So your heart slows down and then becomes much more susceptible to arrhythmias. And that's what can happen. And that's what usually can kill people in very cold temperatures.
Now, sometimes we hear about people go outside, they're shoveling. It's winter, they're shoveling, and then they suffer cardiac arrest. And everybody's different, I get it. When we're going to talk about a bunch of things where we kind of go, well, there's circumstances, but is there a shift happening in their body temperature that's contributing to that cardiac arrest? Is that what makes that happen?
So just shoveling out there is not long enough to drop your body temperature, but what happens there with the stress of the shoveling and the temperature and the demand in your body, these people, lots of them will have like cardiac issues. They have got blockages in the coronary arteries, and it doesn't take long for the stress of the shoveling and the temperature to either tip them into a heart attack if they are already have got blocked arteries, or to shift them into cardiac arrest, and then that's when they drop on time. So in that scenario, I take it that they haven't been there for a long period of time to sustain the significant drop in the core body temperature.
Right.
But we see it not uncommonly in the winter season. Yes, someone comes with a heart attack and tell you, I was just shoveling or I was just moving. So it's I'm sure in Canada the same thing. So these are people who are predisposed or have got underlying cardiac disease usually.
Right. And so I'm just curious too, because it's winter, we're talking about extreme cold. Does it work the other way around? Does extreme heat have the same effect?
In a different way. Yes, in a different way, not to ventricular fibrillation, etc., but it also puts demands on the body, and that can also have a stress on the heart.
Right.
So usually, I mean, in the hot weather, you get like the heat strokes, etc.
Yes.
People are uncomfortable. So the mechanisms are a bit different, but the end result is that you stress the heart, especially if you have got underlying heart disease. Your heart will not be able to take it. and you can just suffer a heart attack as well during that extreme heat.
So there's a few conditions. We're talking about environment, whether it's cold or hot. We're talking about an event that causes additional stress that you might not be accustomed to. And then there's a third element that could be you have some underlying events when we're talking about these things. So just some interesting things that I'm laying it out for folks to better understand.
Absolutely. And also remember, it also depends on what you are used to in temperature, what your body is adapted to. So, for example,
because then you'll have variations.
Exactly, your body, what's used to and how it responds. So if you are used to hot weather and then you all of a sudden you get a severe winter, it might not be severe to you for someone who is living in Canada temperature, but for someone in the temperatures even in 5 degrees centigrade, which to us is not very cold, that might not be the person who is not used to that temperature. His body might be so stressed out that might give him a cardiac event. So it depends really on the environment and what your body is used to.
That is a wonderful breakdown, Dr. Bolad. We started off and we were kind of joking around about what we like, and you mentioned football and stressful events. And a couple of weeks ago on the football field, Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills in the National Football League suffered a cardiac arrest on the field, and he makes a tackle, he stands up, he falls backwards. Now, I don't know the medical history of Damar. I don't even want to speculate on that's none of my, I'm not here to speculate that part of it. But if we can look just at this as a cardiac event in sports, is there such a possibility, and people online have been going on about this, is there such a possibility that a sudden impact to something like a tackle or a body check, maybe in hockey or some meaningful impact would cause a cardiac event like that?
Absolutely. And it is very well recognized, by the way. It's called commotio cordis, and that's just like a fancy Latin term. And commotio cordis basically means irritable heart. And it is well recognized that when the individual or a person sustains a trauma to the chest wall, that the heart, instead of pumping in the normal way, trying to squeeze, or with that event, it starts to quivers rather than pumping. And quivering basically is doing basically quivering, which means that it's not pumping, it's not contracting to pump blood to the rest of the body. It's a very well recognized event. Here in the US, you have seen it, and millions of people around the world have seen it on the field. The US and Canada, also hockey can cause the same thing. A blunt injury to the chest wall can cause that. And you can get it in any sudden impact to the chest wall that can get you a similar thing. Baseball, a ball to the chest can cause that. Lacrosse, the same thing.
So I understand here, Dr. Bolad, when Damar gets hit in the chest, before that, his heart is beating like normal. Boom, 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 right? There's an impact and it changes the way that the heart is responding. So it stops beating and it starts to shake a little bit. Is that the idea?
Absolutely correct, yeah. And that is ventricular fibrillation, which is a type of cardiac arrest. And so he stands up as normal, but that second or two, then there is no circulation, and then he collapses.
That quickly?
That's commotio cordis, irritable heart. And the impact, scientifically, it has to occur 20 to 40 milliseconds within what we call the uprising of the T wave, basically the part of the heart in which start to relax. The hit has to be 20 to 40 milliseconds. So it's a precise hit, and you have to be unfortunate to be hit at that time of the cardiac cycle in order to induce it. Also, the velocity and the impact is important. Once the speed of the impact goes to 30 to 40 miles per hour, that's when that event can cause cardiac arrest. So there is a very well-known registry that was established here in the US, the Commotio Cordis Registry in 1995, and that gives us a lot of insight about this event and what happens to it. The mean age so far, I understand, in that registry is about 15 years of age. Only 10% of people are above 25. In the US, we spoke about the sports that can trigger it, like football, like lacrosse, like hockey, like baseball. Other parts of the world in which this happens is in the commonest is actually soccer. A ball to the chest can cause exactly that. Cricket can cause exactly the same. Rugby can cause exactly the same. So it's a very well recognized event, cardiac event.
Why isn't it so? Should we be seeing more of this? Like, is it? It doesn't seem like this happens very frequently, but the possibility for it to happen seems high, but the actual event doesn't seem to happen regularly.
Because as I explained, you have to be really unlucky to get that event within 20 to 40 milliseconds of the uprise of the T wave and the ECG, which is a part the heart is relaxing. So you have to have that impact to the heart at precisely that particular time. So in the electrophysiology lab and the CAS lab, when we implant a defibrillator, we sometimes induce ventricular fibrillation intentionally, just like what happened to the one we do intentionally to make sure that the device detects it and treats it abnormally. So what we do, we deliver a shock to that part of the T wave in the lab, and immediately the person goes into ventricular fibrillation. So this is in a controlled session in a cardiac catheterization laboratory. What you have seen there has happened on the field secondary to an impact, to a very hard impact to the heart. So really you don't see it a lot because you have to be very precise in the cardiac cycle where that is delivered. But it's a very well recognized entity of cardiac arrest.
Did it help that event? Did it help that Damar Hamlin is a fine-tuned athlete?
Absolutely. That is one thing that helps, but the most important thing is the quickness of response. So in cardiac arrest, with every minute that passes and you're not resuscitated, your chance of survival drops by 10%. With every minute, your chance of survival drops 10%. So it happened right on the field where medical personnel were already there, trained personnel for the event, and the cardiac defibrillator was there. So they rushed immediately to him and they resuscitated him. Actually, as a matter of fact, I thought he took much longer to recover, but I think they were careful. They were doing tests on him, etc., etc. With the speed that he was resuscitated, he should be fine within a few hours. Because basically your heart went into cardiac arrest and you quickly reverted back to normal. So there has been no insignificant damage that happened to the body. But I suspect they put him intubated and ventilated to make more tests before they extubate him, knowing that it's happened on like a national/international arena. They didn't want to get it from. But he should have recovered much quicker than that.
Thank you for explaining that. So we put a little bit of that to rest and educated some folks on sudden impact. Now, when I posted online that I was going to have a cardiologist on the show, a few people reached out and they said, hey, we want to ask some questions. And that's what I do. Sometimes I say, hey, there's somebody's coming on. Do you guys have any questions? Now, excuse me. One of the requests I got was around COVID-19. I haven't talked about this on the show in a long time. I'm bringing it up now and early because there was some associated noise that came with the Damar Hamlin hit in the event that perhaps it was linked to the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, to my knowledge, that's not been verified as true. In fact, they've come out and said it's not related. That's what I saw online. I'm not an expert. I don't have any insider information. That's what was posted in the news about that. Now, do we have any data that suggests that anyone having received a COVID-19 vaccine is either, and here's some conditions, A, more susceptible to cardiac events than without the vaccine? Maybe I'll stop and I'll let you answer that and then I'll do the other two. So is there evidence that anyone having received the COVID-19 vaccine is either more susceptible to cardiac events than without the vaccine? Dr. Bolad is going to answer that question right after we hear from one of our friends of the podcast, Lee's Fine Cars and Service Center.
Whether it's buying a new car or a quick oil change, Lee's Fine Cars and Service Center has got you covered. proudly serving the GTA for over 30 years as your one-stop automotive source for sales, service, and bodywork. Come visit us at 87 Green Lane, conveniently located just south of Bayview and 407, or online at leesfinecars.com.
Go see my friend Hugo at Lee's Fine Cars, and they certainly do have fine cars, and I'm sure Hugo is going to do his best to provide some great customer service. Now, Dr. Bolad is about to tell us if there's any link between cardiac events and the vaccine. Is there evidence that anyone having received the COVID-19 vaccine is either more susceptible to cardiac events than without the vaccine?
So there is an increased recognized incidence of the development of myocarditis with that. So we have got here in the US the vaccine adverse events reporting system, and that gave us a lot of insights about the complications that occur with COVID vaccine, especially with the second dose, not with the first dose. The incidence is so low that really it doesn't really negate the need for the vaccination. What it has shown that in different age groups, it ranges between 75 to 100 cases of myocarditis occurring per million. So if you translate that into percentages, that's 0.01%. Now, the majority of these cases are mild to moderate, spontaneous recovery with it within a few weeks. And the heart, if it was affected, its function, if it was affected, it will return back to normal in the great majority of cases. So there is an association with myocarditis, but there isn't really the effect of the cardiac arrest as such.
Now,
from the data that we have so far.
Dr. Bolad, if we were to do a comparison, so you gave me a statistic of 0.01%. And it's okay. If we don't know the answer to this, it's okay. If that same group of people were to contract COVID, do they have a higher or lower chance of having the same cardiac event or experience?
So I wouldn't be able to give you, I expect to be the same, but I wouldn't be able to give you exact numbers. And the reason being, COVID presents in different ways. Some people gave it mild, some people don't even get tested to know that they have COVID.
Got it.
So I don't have a denominator to tell you exactly how does it compare to the percentages of people get vaccinated. When you are vaccinated, we know that you are vaccinated. But when you have...
Sorry. Is 0.01% enough of a deterrent to make somebody say, I'm not going to get a vaccine? Is that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay.
So today, if you are crossing the road, there is a chance of you being hit by a car, right?
Right.
You hear it all the time. Someone was crossing the road and he got hit by a car.
Yes.
Is that a deterrent that you're not going to use the road? You're not going to cross the road? Absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah, you're still going to cross the road and you're going to use your car. So this is absolutely not.
Okay, so we'll put that one to rest. The second part, now, someone having received the COVID-19 vaccine could suffer, and this is a new term, sudden, the key word is here, sudden, could suffer sudden cardiac arrest after receiving the vaccine in any length of time from immediately after or months later because of the vaccine.
I wouldn't say because of the vaccine. I mean, there has been reports of deaths in elderly people after the vaccine, but there are either they have got underlying disease or they have got other conditions that can predispose them to that. The stress of all the events can impact. Because of the vaccine per se on its own, no. There has been lots of suggestions that it causes death and sudden cardiac arrest, people dying a few days after the vaccination, but nothing really has been definitively linked to that at all.
Right. I mean, you see online sometimes it'll be months after, and somebody will say, "Oh, everybody's experiencing sudden death. They were vaccinated. They must have been vaccinated because they're experiencing sudden death." And but you mentioned something interesting, and you talked about underlying perhaps underlining cardiac disease or some other thing. So when we hear that, the question becomes, well, did they die because of the underlying, or did the shot, the thing that they took, the medicine that they took, the vaccine, did it trigger their underlying? Is there any right way to look at that?
So there are 30 conditions that can also appear. It's not only cardiac. You can, cardiac is myocarditis, but you can get like nerve damage. You can get Bell's palsy. You can get neuritis. So there are lots of other things that you can get extensive bleeding and hemorrhage into the brain because of antibodies formation. So there are lots of things that can happen, but they are not really peculiar to the COVID vaccine. These things can also occur to other vaccines as well. So you are talking to someone who had 5 shots of COVID vaccines. I had in total so far, the last one was just like a month ago, I had the bivalent vaccine. With all the knowledge I have and the people I see, I still opted to go ahead and vaccinate myself. 5 shots so far I had of COVID vaccines.
Understood.
So if I didn't feel it was safe, I wouldn't have done it.
Doctor, what is the phenomenon that is linking COVID-19 vaccine to cardiology events? Is it coincidence, or is it an unknown? It doesn't sound to me like there's any significant base in cardiology that would link these two things. So if it's not, and you tell me, am I wrong in saying there's no significant base in linking these into cardiology? It must be something else, sociological, psychological, something else. But can we equivocally say today, look, we don't have, other than these low percentages, anything that should link these two things together? There's these other external events that are doing this.
Absolutely. And remember, we are now vaccinating people at a mass scale. So what I'm saying is that lots of these things can happen with other vaccines as well, but we haven't subjected the whole population to be vaccinated at once to such a large scale. And so that's why the focus now is just, this must be the vaccine. True, vaccines are not benign. They have got side effects, but they are not really peculiar to this particular disease or to this particular vaccine. And also, if we thought about it, about all the other vaccines, we would stop taking vaccines if we are worried about it. I gave you the example that I use regularly with my patients. If you're crossing the road, what is the percentage of you being hit? And so are you going to stop crossing the road? Absolutely not. Right. So there isn't really anything in particular that for the COVID vaccine, for the people to be worried about. I vaccinate myself and I vaccinate the whole family. Here, my kids, my wife, all of us went. And so with all the patients I see every single day, I don't feel that there is anything really that would raise a red flag here for me.
It has become one of the great debates of our past few years, and it continues on. But I'm glad that we were able to at least provide some education to folks still, and answer those questions as it relates to cardiology. Dr. Bolad, you've mentioned a couple of times, you've talked about arrhythmia. I'd like for us to explain arrhythmias a little bit better. What exactly is a cardiac arrhythmia, and are there different kinds of arrhythmias?
Any abnormality of the heart beating apart from the normal rhythm beat originating in the upper part of the heart being conducted to the lower part of the heart, and the heart contracts at a certain rate and rhythm, any abnormality from this is an arrhythmia. So any beating of the heart which is less than 60 beats per minute, or any beating of the heart above 100 beats per minute, or it can be within the normal range but it's not beating normal, is an arrhythmia. Anything other than the normal. Now, when the heart is low, the arrhythmia can be due to either node dysfunction or due to conduction abnormalities or heart blocks. This is a bradyarrhythmia, that's what you call it. When the heart is fast, above 100, we call it a tachyarrhythmia, meaning the heart is fast. The abnormality can be occurring or originating from the upper part of the heart, the atrium, and conducting to the lower part of the heart, in which case we call it a supraventricular arrhythmia. It can be originating from the lower part of the heart, and this is much more serious. And that can be something like ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation that we just touched on not long ago. That's more serious because the lower part of the heart is pumping so fast and or quivering, and it's not being filled, so the circulation stops. So any abnormality from the normal heart beating is an arrhythmia. One thing is atrial fibrillation. Your heart can still be beating within the normal range, but it is chaotic, irregular beating originating from the upper part of the heart. That is atrial fibrillation. So that is a summary of what arrhythmia is.
Can you, unless you're in an extreme case of any one of those, can you be in an arrhythmia and not know that you're experiencing an arrhythmia?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can. For example, the commonest arrhythmia that we see is atrial fibrillation. As the incidence increases with age, when you are above 70 or 80%, 70 or 80 years of age, the incidence of it becomes 10% or more. And it does occur also in younger people. And this is basically the heart, the upper part of the heart starts to generate extra beats, and the lower part responds irregularly to it. So you can be having atrial fibrillation for a long period of time and not even feel it. In addition, you can have fast heartbeat, which is regular, like a supraventricular arrhythmia, like I described to you, and you might not be compromised. But eventually it will catch up to you because the heart is only built to pump at a certain rate and rhythm. So with time, the heart will start to become weak, and with the weakness, you will start to have symptoms. So it is possible to answer your question.
Would it be strange for someone to know that they are in atrial fibrillation?
Strange in the meaning that they are surprised with it, or
No, if they're experiencing it, and they are aware that they're experiencing that, is that normal that they would know that they're in or out of atrial fibrillation?
So some people know that, immediately know that they have got atrial fibrillation. For a start, I had my first incidence of atrial fibrillation, actually the one and only episode of atrial fibrillation. I was in my mid-30s, and the only thing that has triggered it that day, I was actually practicing in a hospital in London, and in London, United Kingdom, and I must have had like 15 cups of coffee, and I was on call. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt it immediately. It was obvious there's something very wrong in my heart. So you can have it and you immediately notice it, but I get people all the time just coming for routine visits, and we do the EKG and their atrial fibrillation or another sort of arrhythmia, and they don't even feel it. So it does happen, and it is not unheard of that you can be in that rhythm or abnormal rhythm and you don't feel it.
Now, the example you just gave, Dr. Bolad, was coffee. So caffeine induced, alcohol induced. These are environmental sort of things that we can control. Are there causes of atrial fibrillation outside of these things that we know of?
So these are what I would call triggers, not direct causes, because the mechanism of it really are, now we know, 20 years ago we didn't know, but now we know that for atrial fibrillation to occur, most of the time there are extra impulses that originate from what we call the pulmonary veins in the left upper part, draining to the left upper part of the heart. And these beats originate and they get conducted down to the lower part of the heart. So now this we're talking about like stress, like caffeine, like alcohol, like people who have got overactive thyroid. These are triggers. But the underlying mechanism or the underlying origin are these extra beats that originate in the left upper part of the heart. So there has been also studies that looked generally into, for example, extra coffee, people drinking extra coffee, and whether it triggers atrial fibrillation. And it hasn't been really shown conclusively that these do provoke. So it depends. It's variable from person to person, and there's susceptibility to certain stimulants, of which obviously caffeine is one, and what it does to the body. Now, I haven't had any further atrial fibrillations for a long time. So it's your susceptibility and the factors, and maybe it was the stress. I was working very hard, on call, tired, etc. So these are things that we look into. Whenever we can eliminate them, we try to tell our patients avoid A, B, or C factors in order not to provoke it.
You mentioned stress a lot when we talk about these different heart conditions. You know, the one common thing I keep hearing is stress. It just seems to be one of the common factors. But look, you identified these triggers. There is a condition called low atrial fibrillation, and I've come to understand that it usually means that the cause is unknown. We don't know the triggers. They're sporadic, intermittent. What's your thoughts on low atrial fibrillation? And if you don't know what the trigger or the cause is, how do you go about finding that out?
So low atrial fibrillation is a term that we used to use about 10 to 20 years ago a lot. It's now like an outdated term. And usually, as you said, it used to be like you get someone with atrial fibrillation, then you do all the tests, okay? And you don't find anything. And then you call it at the end low atrial fibrillation. But with the advance of science and research, we now came to know that this atrial fibrillation originates, as I said, from certain parts of the body in the heart, and then get conducted. As the triggers can be variable, and they are not really like fixed triggers. Something can trigger it in one person, doesn't trigger it in another person. So the term low atrial fibrillation, we don't use it as commonly as we used to use it before, and maybe I can safely say it's an outdated term, that low atrial fibrillation, because atrial fibrillation can happen to anyone at all different ages. Its incidence increases with age, but it can happen to anyone, and it's an electrical event from originates in the heart, and it gets conducted to the lower part of the heart in an irregular pattern. The issue with atrial fibrillation and what we used to call like low atrial fibrillation is that basically you don't have lots of risk factors, and therefore your risk of clots forming on the heart and embolization in stroke is low. That's what we used to refer to as low atrial fibrillation. For example, you could have taken the example I just gave you about myself in my 30s, getting atrial fibrillation. There was nothing apart from I drank so much coffee, whether that contributed to it or whether other factors. It's low atrial fibrillation. I was quite young. Everything is fine. So that's, I could have called it like low atrial fibrillation. The risk of clots forming in my heart from atrial fibrillation and getting a stroke is low. One thing I have to point out about this atrial fibrillation here, which is very important. We worry about atrial fibrillation because the heart is irregular, which means that the blood in the heart does not circulate normally, especially in the left upper chamber, which we call the left atrium. And with that inefficiency and inadequacy in circulation, clots tend to form in the heart. And these clots, they can get loose and go to different parts of the body and can cause serious damage. If they go to the brain, you'll get a stroke immediately, just like like that. If you go to your arm, it will block the circulation to your arm, and that becomes an emergency. Unless this clot is removed, your hand will need to be amputated because it's not receiving blood supply. If it goes to your leg and obstructs blood flow to the leg, then that becomes an emergency. You have to do something immediately for the same thing. Within a couple of hours, your leg will have to be amputated if the muscle is dead. It's an emergency. So that's what we worry about it here. Atrial fibrillation, we do worry about clots forming in the heart. When we used to refer to it as lone atrial fibrillation, and with it, I have to add, when atrial fibrillation, you have to get anticoagulated for this reason. You have to be started on blood thinners to prevent these clots from forming, and that obviously have got consequences. So, in the lone atrial fibrillation, going back to your question, it usually occurred in younger people, no obvious effect. The risk of you having clots would be low if your heart went back to normal, and therefore you don't need to give blood thinners, etc. And you used to refer to this is more towards the lone atrial fibrillation. Now we know that if you have got atrial fibrillation, you have got certain predictors of what is your risk of having clots in the heart are. In the great majority of cases, unless your risk is really minimal, we do not start people on, unless your risk is minimal, we almost always start people on blood thinners in order to make sure that they don't form the clots and they don't suffer from the ill effects of these clots.
So Dr. Bolad, let me ask about frequency. So you said, well, I had this one event, it was one time, it was, many years ago. If an individual has one event or two events per year, or maybe they have one event this year and then they don't have one the next year, and then they have one the following year, but then not in the next year. Like if it's intermittent like that, are they in that low risk category? Is that called low atrial fibrillation? What was called low atrial fibrillation?
No, with that here, I wouldn't give it a term of loan, which is, I said, is an outdated term that we don't use.
What do we call it?
Just atrial fibrillation.
Just atrial fibrillation. Okay.
Because when you give it the term loan, you are really giving it like a lower category, which is not the right thing. Automatically, you're giving a false sense of security.
Right.
And you might not treat it properly, and then the individual sustains a major issue. So that's why it faded out. So the example you gave here, it occurred more than once intermittently. Then you have to ask yourself, how many times did it occur and you didn't even feel it? Okay, so this might be something which is happening to you regularly and you're not feeling it on and off, and that is a major risk for clot formation and embolization, including development of stroke. So that you have to treat. You have to reduce the heart rate to keep it within the 60 to 100 range, and we have to start blood thinners, so that these clots that form try to prevent clots from forming in the heart and giving rise to stroke, etc.
Has AFib become a more common thing?
Well, it has been a much more recognized thing now, because obviously with the advance of technology. Before, we didn't have everyone have got like a smartwatch, for example, that tells them your heart is irregular. But now with the increased recognition, which is a good thing, it's a very good thing, because you can detect it very early in your watch, or your blood pressure machine tells you your heart is irregular, and then you have to go and get it checked quickly. It's better for you than you not knowing it and then suffering a stroke all of a sudden, something which you could have prevented. Would you have known and treated early? So,
you mentioned blood pressure just now. Where does blood pressure fit into the conversation when it comes to arrhythmias? Does it change the health risk factors in terms of what the high blood pressure is? What is the impact of high blood pressure on the heart and these arrhythmias?
So in the heart has got recognized effects. Like, to start with, high blood pressure is called, another term for it is called the silent killer. It can damage your whole arteries in the body, not only in the heart. It can put a strain on the heart to make it thicker. And eventually, if it continues, it might lead to stiffness of the heart and development of something we call diastolic heart failure. So it has got lots of ill effects. With that, when this develops, with that you are more prone or have got more predisposition to develop all sorts of cardiac diseases, not only arrhythmias. Arrhythmias is one of them. But you get the shortness of breath, the fluid in the lung, the arrhythmias, the irregularity. You're putting stress now in your whole body. So it does have ultimately an effect, catch an effect. Initially, the high blood pressure can be completely silent and you don't have any ill effect from it. But eventually it will catch up with you to cause lots of diseases in which irregularities of the heart, we're talking about atrial fibrillation here, is a real concern as well.
Is there a correlation between high blood pressure and atrial fibrillation or arrhythmias? Like, can high blood pressure be a cause of those things?
Eventually, yes, it will. It can. I'm not talking about one measurement which is high,
right?
Or so. I'm talking about some consistently having high blood pressure untreated for a long period of time. Yes, it does.
It is. Now, if you control the blood pressure, could it impact where you no longer have these sort of arrhythmic events?
So the important thing here about it, that's why it's called the silent killer, high blood pressure.
Yeah.
You have really to detect it early. The problem is that if your heart becomes stiff and the muscle enlarged and the upper chamber of the heart become enlarged and the valve starts to be leaky, etc., then to reverse it is very difficult. You can try to reduce the progression, but to reverse it completely, it won't happen, but you can control it. Okay, you can control how the progression is. And that's why you have to test for it regularly, and you have to make sure that your blood pressure is controlled.
You've talked about a couple of drug treatments when it comes to, the arrhythmias and whatnot. If we can, I'm going to say a few names. You correct me if I'm not saying these correctly.
That's okay.
There's one called bisoprolol, and I believe that one helps lower the heart rate. And then there's flecainide, and I think that helps return the heart to normal sinus rhythm. And I believe with arrhythmias, then you started talking about blood thinners. They also get introduced, like Xarelto being one of them. And in maybe some milder cases, you've got low dose aspirins and things like that. So providing that I've gotten the functions of those drugs correctly, what's your opinion in terms of using these from a short and long-term perspective? So we know in the short term, I think I've heard you say, look, you gotta have some treatment because all these other things might happen. What do they mean to somebody taking any of those long-term?
So there are different categories for treatment, as you mentioned. Bisoprolol belongs to a class of medications called beta blockers. Similar medications are like metoprolol, propranolol. There are a complete class of medications. That's basically, they slow the heart rate. They do not control the rhythm. What we call these are rate controlling medications, rate controlling. So we use them when we decide that this person is in permanent atrial fibrillation and it's unlikely that he or she are going to revert to normal. Then the next thing is to control the heart rate in order not to have bad effects on the heart. Basically, the heart can only keep up with so much beating. It's not manufactured. We haven't been created for very high heart rates all the time, as if you're running all the time. So these are rate controlling medications. Flecainide and others belong to a category of medications called antiarrhythmics. And basically they try to revert the rhythm back to sinus rhythm, the normal beating. So this would be the other class of medication we introduce if the beta blockers if we need to revert to the person to the normal sinus rhythm, or we are trying after, for example, we put them in sinus rhythm by a cardioversion to maintain them in sinus rhythm in the long term. We put them on this medication. Like any medications, all medications have got side effects irrespective, and the response of everyone is different from the others. Obviously, if you can maintain someone with the least amount of medications, that is the best thing, if we can do that. But should we not succeed, then we have to then go to the further step of medication. But it also depends on the individual himself. For example, if you are young and you get an arrhythmia and you feel that you cannot deal with it without medications, say, for example, you are in your 40s or 50s and you get it. I don't want to put you on medications for the next 40 or 50 years of your life, right? Because these have got side effects. So that's when we consider other therapies, like, for example, ablation, cardiac ablation. So there are other treatments which are offered. Ablations are not without their possible side effects or complications. It's an invasive cardiac procedure, and so there are not every treatment is applicable to every person. If someone in their 70s and 80s and can maintain them on antiarrhythmics, for example, flecainide or the others like amiodarone, etc., then we say, well, why should I subject that 70-year-old person to an extensive cardiac procedure? We give them medication. But when you're 40 and you're active or whatever, that's a different perspective altogether.
That's good to know. That's the variation in that. I want to talk about ablation in a second. Xarelto and blood thinners. You hear stories about, okay, yes, these are the things that they would help us with in terms of the cardiology of it. Are there concerns in terms of them causing brain bleeds or other, events where you hear people that sometimes they use the word bleed out, but I don't know if that's an appropriate term or not. But are there, and again, we go back to earlier, we had a different conversation about risks and weighing out the risks. Is bleeding out a common thing of Xarelto or something you have to monitor, or how would that work?
So, bleeding out is obviously an aggressive term.
It is an aggressive term, I know. So, but I'm going with online stuff, right? People use different terms, so, right?
But there is a risk of bleeding for sure. And the most common and the most serious we worry about is bleeding in the brain.
Right.
So Xarelto belongs to a class of medications that we call the DOACs, direct oral anticoagulants, which are safer than the warfarines that we used to use in the past.
Right.
Less bleeding, but bleeding is still there. So it depends also on your age, on your status. For example, if you are someone who is prone to falling, etc., right, we are worried that you might fall and bang your head and then bleed into your head, and that would not be a good thing, etc. So bleeding is a risk, but then also the issue here, as I said, am I going to leave you without blood thinners, so blood clots can form in your heart and then give you a stroke, or am I going to put you on blood thinners to reduce the risk of bleeding, to reduce the risk of clots? So there is always this balance here that you have to strike here, which is more serious in a particular patient, the risk of bleeding or the risk of clots, and they have to wait. There is no universal applicable treatment for everyone.
Is low dose aspirin, does it fit into the conversation?
Absolutely not. For atrial fibrillation, low dose aspirin is out of the question. The low dose aspirin, people might think that it's a blood thinner. Low dose aspirin is things like for coronary disease and for stents. For atrial fibrillation, no. It is not something that you use. It's not going to prevent clot formation. For atrial fibrillation, it has to be a blood thinner, either warfarin or of the DOACs or NOACs, as we call them, like Xarelto, etc.
Let's go to ablations. So you talked about a procedure called ablation. Can you tell us what the procedure involves and why this might be an option? And I know you probably spoke to it from an age perspective, but why would this be an option, and what is an actual ablation? What does it do? How does it work?
So if you remember earlier in the discussion, I told you we know where these signals are coming from that are provoking the atrial fibrillation.
Yeah.
And this will come from the pulmonary veins, okay? And these are in the left upper, they drain into the left upper chamber of the heart, the left atrium. So we know that in the great majority of cases, that's where the signals originate, right? So an ablation is a procedure in which we introduce catheters and we go to that part of the heart there, and we either use like heat energy or cold energy and trying to make a ring of isolation, so that even when these extra bits fire up there, they don't conduct to the heart. So we make like a rim of an area of non-conduction of these signals to come down to the heart. Okay, so that is the theory behind atrial fibrillation ablation to isolate the foci or these veins completely so that they don't conduct to the part of the heart. Now, ablation is not without its complications. It's an invasive cardiac procedure. I'm putting catheters, which are like metals, going all the way to the heart. I'm applying energy and maneuvering these catheters in the heart. We have got lots of means we can see what's going on, but there are complications for it. To start with, I can give you a rough estimate about the risk of death, for example, from ablations. Not everyone, obviously, is susceptible to the same risk, but studies have shown about 1 to 5 in 1,000 people die from the ablation. 1 in 5, 1 to 5 in 1,000. There is a risk of perforation of the heart and leading to what we call like cardiac tamponade. That's bleeding out of the chambers of the heart into the cavity, the pericardium that's around the heart, compressing the heart, and that becomes an emergency. And that we have to be dealing with very, very quickly. And we have to be careful about it. But the risk is there, okay? There is a risk of, for example, a narrowing of the sites of the pulmonary veins where we burned to isolate these beads. And that can narrow with time and can lead to what we call pulmonary stenosis, pulmonary vein stenosis. And then that becomes symptomatic. And because the blood's not flowing normally, being obstructed from draining into the left atrium, we have to go ahead and fix it as well. There is a risk of damage to the valves. They are putting stiff catheters all the way up there. So there is always a risk. And therefore, that's why you don't subject everyone to it. There is also a risk of clot formation as well, even though you are using it to prevent clot, because you are burning, you're causing burns in the muscle of the heart, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, you have to also put blood thinners for a period of time until it heals, and it heals nicely. And so that these clots don't form in the places where you have burnt, and then goes and gives you a stroke. So it's not like it's a very benign procedure. It's an aggressive procedure, but it's sometimes needed. And in people who do like thousands of it all the time, it's safer than people who do less of it. Nonetheless, we don't subject every person to it. And that's the reason why we didn't just go and subject everyone to it.
How do you get to the heart? Is it through the leg? Is it through the arms? How do you do it?
Usually for electrophysiology, like atrial fibrillation, we go from the veins in the leg, both sides. We put catheters and we go all the way up to the heart. Inferior vena cava, we go then to the right atrium, and then we cross to the left side of the heart. And that's the commonest road that we use.
Are we in a place now where procedures like these ablations, and I know you gave statistics, and there's always statistics, are we in a place where you are comfortable recommending them because they do have a high level of success and safety?
We are. I think that there are risks. The risks are not high, but there are there. And so, for example, I always discuss with my patient, I think very important, because if anyone is going to get the complication, it is the patient, right? And so I also try to see the expectation of the patient. What do they expect? Do they want to be on blood thinners? Do they want to have, for example, be more active, etc.? If you are in your 80s or you're not that active or whatever, I don't want to subject you to a procedure that has complication. If you are young, in your 40s and 50s, I don't want to put you on medication for the rest of your life. You don't want to be on blood thinners for the rest of your life, etc. So you discuss all these issues with the patient, right, so that he or she are aware of what they are going to be getting themselves into. So I always give my impression about what should happen, but I always inform the patient fully so that they are aware and they can go and think about it. They can listen to videos, for example, like what I do, and etc., etc. So they're informed. So the patient is informed about what is happening.
When you go through an ablation, is it at some point later in your life, if you do it at a younger age, is there a chance that you then would need a pacemaker because of the ablation?
There is always the risk of needing a pacemaker during electrophysiology procedures, okay? But it's not really like a direct relationship like that. Okay. With age, usually our conduction system becomes less efficient, and sometimes for no obvious reason apart from an aging process that you need a pacemaker. But it is not like that you going to have atrial fibrillation ablation, you're going to have a pacemaker. No, the great majority of them, they don't have a pacemaker at all for the procedure.
Dr. Bolad, you were mentioning earlier, you said smartwatch, and technology has certainly changed a whole lot over the years. I have a smartwatch. It's on my wrist. I can, press the button. It'll do my ECG, or sometimes we call it EKG. I can have the, data sent to you directly. Now, do you as a doctor trust this digital data that we wear on our wrists? Like, do you use it? Is it accurate enough to provide you a baseline for next steps, or should we not trust what's on our wrists?
I think for an individual, you should take, if it tells you that your heart is irregular or an atrial fibrillation, you should definitely share this with your physician. Right. Your physician is not going to take it on face value if you are still not in atrial fibrillation. Say, for example, it read atrial fibrillation, but when you saw the doctor, it's normal, your heart is beating fine. The physician is not going to start you on blood thinners and go through all these medications, because he or she will need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you did definitely get into that. These readings, the technology is improving, the readings are becoming more and more accurate with time, but we're still not anywhere like near 100% accuracy. Not even with our advanced medical machines that we give to the patient. Sometimes still we get into an issue that is this atrial fibrillation or not, even with very sophisticated equipment.
Right.
So I think that the fact that your watch is telling you that your atrial fibrillation is definitely a red flag, and you should take seriously, and you should go and share it with your physician in order to conduct further tests to prove whether you do have it or you don't have it.
Now, sometimes when I do the watch thing, it says you're in normal sinus rhythm, but by the way, we don't measure if you're having a heart attack. What's the difference between atrial fibrillation or an arrhythmia and a heart attack? What's the
completely different, and that's why they probably write it there. And the reason being, arrhythmia, atrial fibrillation, etc., is an electrical event. Okay, electric issues with the conduction system, with extra beats, with slow beats, etc. Heart attack, on the contrary, is due to blockage, usually, or inefficient blood flow to the muscle of the heart, which is more like a mechanical / plumbing issue with delivery of blood to the muscle of the heart. So this is the big difference between arrhythmia is an electrical event, heart attack is like a plumbing issue of delivery of blood to the muscle of the heart, either due to cutoff of the blood supply or due to not enough blood supply reaching a particular part of the muscle of the heart. So these are the differences. For sure, your watch will not be able to tell you that you are having a heart attack.
That's why the watch gives us that warning, because they're unable to measure that type of event. Another question I got from folks who said, hey, can you talk about pacemakers? We've talked about them a little bit. Is it true that you must stop the heart from beating to install a pacemaker? And what powers the pacemaker? So
the pacemaker basically will try to stimulate the heart. You don't stop the heart at all in installing a pacemaker. A pacemaker is actually very simple to install. One of the simplest devices you can install is a pacemaker. And usually it's now currently under the skin, usually under the left collarbone. You make an incision and then you find a vein, whether it's a cephalic vein or subclavian vein. And then you put wires, and through these wires, then you put the pacemaker lead all the way to the ventricle, or the ventricle and the atrium. So the wire, you put a sheath, then you put these pacemaker leads. And then you could position them under X-ray control. And then at the end, you connect the other parts of the leads, one part in the heart, the other part is the pacemaker device. And you connect them and you bury it under the skin there, and you suture it. It's a very simple procedure, the pacemaker. You certainly do not stop the heart for that.
So it's not a open the chest, drop it in. So just the perceptions on it. Okay.
Now, actually, there are the types of pacemakers which are called the leadless pacemakers. We don't use them for everyone because obviously I've got some issues as well. But in certain people, we don't even need to. In people that were worried of putting wires, we put the pacemaker straight into the right ventricle, the apex of the right ventricle. So we go from the leg all the way, we place it in there. So there isn't even a cut there in there, but there is a pacemaker directly implanted in the right ventricle. So pacemakers are one of the simplest procedures you can have.
What powers the pacemaker? Are they batteries? How does it?
They are batteries. The battery, depending on the usage of him. So if you're needing the pacemaker to help maintain your beating at a particular range, then it might last you like 5, 6, 7 years. If you are not using it that frequently, it can last you for about 10 years. Usually we do regular checks on them to see how much of the battery is left regularly. And now most of them do automatic transmission, that you can get lots of information even from home. You don't need to go to the doctor every few months. You need to go once a year still. But most of the time you can get the information from the phone. It goes down to your monitoring center and they tell you exactly how much battery is left there.
So Dr. Bolad, we've talked a lot about diseases and you know the potential challenges and issues. What should we be focused on when it comes to heart health? Eating right food, exercise. Is there something else of what should we be doing? And it may vary by age or whatever, but just some advice.
Absolutely. You mentioned the right food, obviously 100%. You have to feed your body the right nutrients. For example, eating more vegetables and less meat, and eating much less of the red meat rather than the white meat. Eating stuff that have been proven beneficial, and one of the diets that have been shown to be most beneficial to the heart with less incidence of heart disease is the Mediterranean diet. So the right food is definitely important. Exercise is very important. You should have at least moderate exercise in so many different forms, about 150 minutes a week, even not more, if you can. Changing lifestyle. So these are obviously control of blood pressure. You don't smoke. So all these are very, very important. Have a regular checkup every year with your doctor to make sure that nothing is missed. We spoke about atrial fibrillation can be undetected, for example. Blood pressure if you don't measure your blood pressure regularly, you might not know that you are suffering from it until it's too late.
Right.
So have regular checkup with your doctor is very, very important with that. So all these are very, very important things. I keep telling my patients, and I use this example, and people really relate to it, and I'm just going to share it here with you. I keep telling my patients, look at your body as if you're looking at your car. If you want that car to last you for a long period of time, you need to keep it clean. You need to go to service regularly to put the right oil. You need to keep the tires fine, and you need to take care of it. If you don't do that, your car is not going to last you for long. Exactly your body. You have to take care of your body. You have to make sure what you are eating. If you can say that similar to the oil or the gas you put in the car. You have to make sure that you don't damage your car by crashing it. Basically, don't break your bones. Take care of yourself. So to keep yourself in a good shape. Like that, your body is going to last you for a long period of time. If you ignore it, you don't check it, you don't maintain it, then that car or your body is not going to last you for long. So this is the example I always give to my patients, and I think they relate to it because it's a simple example.
Yeah,
it's very simple.
Taking care of yourself, and we relate to cars. Now you have your clinic. Just very quickly, Dr. Bolad, what services do you provide at your clinic, and what if so I've asked you a bunch of questions, but what if somebody wants to call you and they have questions? How does that work?
So I have got on my website, if you go to drbolad.org, I have got a button there. You can ask free questions anytime. As a matter of time, as a matter of fact, I get like tens to hundreds of questions every week from people from all over the world, literally from all over the world, asking me questions. And I believe it or not, the people don't believe it, but I reply to every single person of them. And I have got actually interesting, someone communicated with me not long ago. She said, all of a sudden she remembered me and she said, hey, Dr. Bolad, I'm so-and-so from Australia. You advised me about 2 years ago. So people really do remember that. And they always keep in touch to get more information. So go to my website, drbolad.org, the full word, Dr. D-O-C-T-O-R, bolad.org. There is a button there, ask a free question. Any question you have, whatever you think is relevant or not, if you have it, ask it, and I will be able to help you and guide you about what to do. I get people ask me, hey, Dr. Bolad, I've got an appointment with my cardiologist or my physician. I'm suffering from A, B, and C. What do you think, or what should I ask? These are people that I have known from over the years, and I keep telling them, ask about A, B, C, D, or watch this video of mine. It will tell you most of the information before you go and see your doctor. So I'm welcome. I'm happy to answer any question. Anyone is welcome to ask these questions through my website.
A doctor who cares. I love it. Thank you so much for doing this segment with me, Dr. Bolad, and for the listeners. Before we let you go, is there anything that you would like to mention that we haven't talked about?
Well, we covered a lot of grounds here, but one thing that people don't realize is that really your heart health or your health in general is a part-time job. It does not come as a coincidence that you're having a healthy body and you have got low likelihood, or you don't not suffering from particular diseases. It needs work. You mentioned what you need to do, the risk factors, etc. But it's really important for people to take care of their health in general and of their heart health, to be very much aware of how to keep them in a good shape and keep them running for a long period of time. So what I'll tell people, it's a part-time job. And I really mean it. It's a part-time job. You're not going to be healthy, heart disease-free, especially all of us grow and kids today, if you don't work on it. And you have got all the resources in the current day and age, from the internet questions. In Best mentioned, I answer questions for free anytime, all the time, from people all over the world. So they've got the resources, myself and others. So it's a part-time job. And if you take care of your heart and of your body, it will last you for a long period of time.
An investment. Thank you, Dr. Bolad. The universal Dr. Bolad, a triple certified.
Thank you. Well, I try to help.
You definitely have. So thank you so much. A triple certified
welcome.
Physician, certified by the American Board of the Internal Medicine and Cardiology, International Cardiology, and Internal Medicine. He operates the Bolad Heart Clinic. I'll have all of the information for you in our notes, in our show notes as usual. I'll have all those links in there. Thank you again so much, Doctor, and take care.
Thank you very much for having me, and it has been really a pleasure talking to your audience.
That is an absolutely informative segment from Dr. Bolad, and hopefully you're able to take away some education for yourselves from that. Now let's get back to some music. Our musical guest, Elyse Saunders, from her EP entitled Free. Here's a song called Jeans.
Just to impress, 'cause we're all a hot friggin' mess. No matter where you're from or what you do, we're always gonna share our drinks with you. Rules with shallow water, books getting judged by covers. That just It's all the same. Got the good times flowing through our veins. Don't love you for your moonshine, fun wine, Ford 150 or a Chevy Bob. Sunday best to rip 10 away. I'm gonna love you for your jeans. Your jeans. Gonna love you for. Gonna love you for. Gonna love you for.
That is Elyse Saunders with her song Jeans. We're going to hear a little bit more from Elyse later on in the show. Now, before we get to our next segment, let's hear from one of our friends of the podcast. Here is Recipes at My Table.
Recipes at My Table is a work of family, love of food, and sharing of stories. The stories keep the memories alive and make every day a party in my kitchen. Join me for the sharing of traditional Italian recipes and so much more. Visit me at www.recipesatmytable.com.
We are welcoming to the show the CEO of the Canadian Ski Council, Paul Pinchbeck. We're going to chat about this favorite Canadian winter activity and some of the ins and outs of the ski industry, conditions, safety, weather impacts, and more as we enter possibly one of the best months for skiing in February. Paul, welcome to the show. Are you wearing your ski gear?
Am I wearing my ski gear? Yes, actually, funny enough, as we're taping this, I've just finished skiing at a place called Bromont, just outside of Montreal in the Eastern Townships. Great spot if anyone gets a chance to visit.
And what are the conditions like out in Bromont?
Pretty good. I mean, it's no secret we've had a very up and down winter, particularly in the east, but the western part of Canada hasn't exactly been all snow and sunshine. So they're blessed with some good recent snow. They certainly make a lot of snow. I got the inside tour of their new snowmaking facility, highly automated. It's quite good, and the product that it puts out is quite good. And that's typical of most ski areas across the eastern part of the country. Lots of snowmaking. A bit of green grass around the driveway, I'm afraid.
And we're going to talk about a few of those things, but shout out to Bromont in the meantime. Now, look, when I said ski gear, I'm thinking a toque, some gloves. What is there other? Is there? I mean, obviously skis, but is there something else that's considered ski gear these days, or?
Well, certainly from the top down, certainly a helmet is considered ski gear these days. 97% of Canadians wear a helmet. We think it's one of the most important things you can do from a personal protection point of view. We can look at all the great heated boots and electric gloves and electronic vests and things like that to keep yourself warm. But honestly, having a helmet on your head and a good pair of goggles makes all the difference in the world. It's simply going to help prevent some of those injuries that happen in low speed incidents, such as a slip, trip, or fall on the hill.
So we've gone a little further since the last time I've been skiing, but maybe by the end of this conversation, I may want to do it.
I hope so.
Yeah. So listen, that brings me to your role. So as CEO for the Canadian Ski Council, are you traveling? It sounds like you're in Bromont, you're in Montreal. Are you traveling coast to coast, or what's your role as CEO as you're doing this?
Almost coast to coast. My role, I like to say I have one of the greatest jobs in the world. I get to mix my passion with my business. This has been a lifelong endeavor for me, the Canadian snow sports industry in all its glory. But our role at the Canadian Ski Council, we do quite a bit of marketing, skier development for the industry, the grade 4-5 snow pass, which gets kids who are 9 and 10 out to the slopes. We also have a program called Never Ever Days, which brings out new Canadians and women. And we really are working hard to change the equation when it comes to diversity, equality, and inclusion on our slopes. And so those are really important efforts. But behind the scenes, we do quite a bit of benchmarking, quite a bit of research, and a lot of work with our federal government and some provincial governments on issues that are very important to keeping our ski areas healthy as far as business goes.
So you're not just skiing down the hills across Canada. Sounds like some promotion and education and just tackling it sounds like some social challenges that we have today too, right?
Yeah, it's an industry that is made up of pioneers. I've been with some of them over the last couple of days, men and women who have built their businesses from the ground up. That means that you're very focused on your business and making sure that it runs well. Where the Canadian Ski Council and our sister organizations across the country in instruction and competitive sports come in is we help organize all the little bits and pieces that are around our industry. Canada is a winter country. Canada should be a winter sports country, and certainly, we've all probably rejoiced at the World Juniors for hockey, and we've watched our fair share of curling. Certainly, skiing and snowboarding and Nordic skiing have a place in everyone's hearts. I was just in Montreal this past week, and we had some snow, and it was absolutely heartwarming to watch people carrying their cross country skis on the metro to get to Parc Montreal to go cross country skiing. That is fantastic.
It's not just about Les Canadiens. All right, I got it.
Well, it might just be about the Canadians, but I have to say I won't pledge my allegiance to anyone.
So you started talking a little bit about winter. Look, I'm in the GTA for those who GTA is Greater Toronto area, but I recently went for a little ride north on Highway 400. 69, made my way across Highway 17 all the way over to Sault Ste. Marie. And there's some nice hills that way too. Churchmont up in Sault Ste. Marie. But there's stretches of that ride that had like a very low yield of snow, probably one of the lowest that I've seen in years. Now, did the December and it seems like early part or even up to today, January, did this mild weather impact the ski season in Ontario?
Well, absolutely. It's impacted the ski season in various ways across the country. But let's talk about Ontario. And I'm a Torontonian born and bred. I grew up in North York, around Yonge and Sheppard, so not too far away from probably most of your listeners. It's been a odd start to the year. We have them every once in a while. A good friend of mine likes to say, 1 year in 7 will be a very slow start. Well, unfortunately, he got his sums right this year. And Pete, if you're listening, we're really happy, or unhappy rather, that you did. It's been one of those slow start years, and the grass is still green, but Ontario skiers have invested significantly in the ability to make snow at their ski areas. And so you take the 400 highway, you have Snow Valley, you have Mount St. Louis, you have Horseshoe Valley, all within about an hour and 45 from downtown Toronto on the highway. They are all in really good shape and have made quite a bit of snow and started making snow very early. Blue Mountain, a little bit farther on, also big snowmaking system. And so what you tend to find is that there's good conditions on the hills. It's just a little green getting there, and that's a difficult mental thing to overcome when you're walking outside your house in either the north end of city in Richmond Hill or way downtown south of Eglinton. It's it's easy to question, but I can tell you, check the webcams. They're doing okay.
So I want to ask, and I want to get to the rest of Canada too. I don't want to ignore, I don't want to make it just Ontario Central here, but you started talking about good ski conditions. And I often hear that. And so it's me, I'm driving and I'm looking over and I'm thinking, I've got no snow here and I do see snow on that mountain, but what makes it some of the best skiing conditions? Like, how can the hills be saying, oh, these are some of the best conditions when I could walk in my ankle high, winter boots in the fields?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it in some cases, great skiing or good skiing, good snowboarding conditions are a matter of personal choice. I've been at this since the age of 13, and I'm several decades older than that now. And I'll ski in just about anything. I'm one of those people who are, dare we say it, addicts. Sometimes I call them first chair to last call skiers. We're out there the first day and we're right there until it melts down, sometimes sneaking the odd run in after close. But don't tell my former employers that. The net is that I think the ultimate ski day for many people comes when you have a combination of a couple of elements: a little bit of fresh snow, or a little bit of man-made snow, a temperature that's not too cold. And certainly we've seen huge fluctuations in temperature over the last number of years across the country. When I arrived in Vernon this winter, near Vernon is close to a resort called Silver Star, it was minus 24 degrees. That's not fun to ski in at times. There were people out there. I was out there, but that's not ideal. But you couple, say, -5, -9 with some sunshine and some fresh snow, whether man-made or a gift from Mother Nature, that's about the perfect ski day. I really do think that in some cases our sport is solar powered, in that the sunshine definitely brings the people out.
So those are recipes for optimal ski and snowboard conditions. Yeah. Those conditions. And you mentioned Vernon. Just for clarification for listeners, Vernon, British Columbia.
That's correct, Vernon, British Columbia.
Okay, cool. So you started talking a little bit about BC. We talked a little bit about Ontario. What is the state of the nation, across Canada in terms of the ski industry so far this season? And we're approaching, we're almost in February for the rest of the season. What are we looking like?
Well, things look fairly good. First off, we were starting the year on a high in terms of participation. We grew the sport by a little over 15%, about 360,000 extra active skiers over the course of the last year of the pandemic. And that's really reflective of the fact that Canadians wanted to be outside. They wanted to have exercise. They wanted the physical and the mental stimulus associated with some activity, because we all know what the last couple of years have been like. Now, we have largely benefited at the expense of some things you couldn't do indoors, and we're not an industry that wants to benefit because one can't go into an arena or one can't go to the swimming pool or the gym. But we think we have a compelling case for at least a place in everybody's exercise routine. This year started well with some early snow. Ski areas in British Columbia, Alberta opened quickly. Even in Ontario, we had a couple of early openings. Earlier than planned. And then, unfortunately, the weather did sort of settle down into this sort of warm, a little bit of rain, a little bit of snow type pattern that we've had over Christmas. Ontario and most of the country had decent snow conditions, and people came out as we headed into the new year. Of course, you had a few deep freezes, you had some thaws, you had lots of rain and poor weather in Ontario, and so things have been a bit up and down. I would say this is turning out to be a fairly normal year. And I know that sounds funny, but we all like to think that the ski season happens and it's just limitless snow that falls from the sky. In truth, Canada's ski areas are used to battling through the elements, and they stand sort of ready to shift. They're in very, very many ways the euphemism of calling us snow farmers, and that's not an insult to any farmer anywhere, because we sympathize with you when your crops are being damaged by heat and water. Our crops are sometimes also damaged by heat and water. We've learned to live with this, but I think that and the hardy nature of Canadian skiers means that we're having a pretty good year. We have lots to play for. February and into March are generally the 6 to 8 weeks where most people find that incredible combination of temperature, fresh snow, and sunshine. And that, just like a beach day, it makes people go to the beach. When you're warm and sunny, that's what happens with ski areas. And it looks like it's starting to turn our way.
So some sweet spots there. Have you noticed a difference over the years? Look, we hear a lot about environment and the impact that, the weather patterns and the condition. Have you noticed a difference in the ski seasons because of environment and weather impacts?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, first off, I think it's important to acknowledge that climate change is real, and there's just no two ways about it. That you're not going to argue that the world is cyclical. The weather events are more severe and more challenging all the time. Ski areas in general across the country have experienced a lengthening of their season over the last 15 to 20 years. And when you say that, people kind of go, what? Pardon? Wait, it's warmer, the climate's changing, what's happening? Well, that's that investment in snowmaking and grooming technology. There's quite a bit more that we can do with quite a bit less snow to provide a consistent, safe, fun sliding surface. As I said, it's not going to be the deep powder and the shots that one sees in all the travel ads for heli skiing and for British Columbia resorts where people are carving through seemingly limitless powder. But in order to just go skiing, we've had a lengthening of the season. It's certainly become more unsteady over the last number of years. I think the overall snowfall has decreased in terms of natural snow. I'm a kid who grew up in Toronto. I was much smaller then in many dimensions, but I can remember the big snowbanks and the big snowfalls, and we don't seem to have those quite as much. But we're definitely trying to substitute where technology can help us. We're using it.
So, Paul, you've talked about snowmaking a few times. If we can just focus on that for a moment. What are we talking about? How do you make man-made snow? Sure. And then what's the difference? Like, what am I skiing on when I'm skiing on man-made versus organic snow? And would I notice a difference?
Well, let's start with how it's made first. And snow is precipitation, rain, essentially, that starts at a high altitude, and the water crystallizes around a particle. Generally, that's some form of atmospheric dust, dirt, etc. So a natural process. Funny enough, our process is very close to that, save for the fact that we do use air and water together to make snow. And how we do it is essentially we pump large volumes of water. In the case of many ski areas in Ontario, for example, that is somewhere between 8 and 12,000 gallons an hour that go up the hill in order to make snow. So you have quite a bit of water, and you also have a stream of compressed air, and that compressed air arrives at a nozzle, a very fine sprayer, and helps fracture the water molecule into its smallest component bit. And that acts very much like a small snowflake starting to form. That drifts down, and it generally, if the snow is being made correctly, freezes and becomes snow. What we need is that good old -5 temperature that we always talk about. And when you talk to skiers, they love the -5, and that's about where we can make snow at an efficient level. What's really happened in our business over the last number of years is there's far more automation. Back when I started in this industry, people used to go up onto the ski hill with snowmobiles, and there'd be teams of people running around, hooking up hoses and aiming guns and all of this. Now it's some controllers in a control room who press a button and the white stuff starts. And what that allows us to do is really take advantage of these smaller snowmaking windows, because we're no longer getting the 8, 10, plus 24, 48, 72 hours worth of temperature. We've been able to take advantage with automation of hour-long opportunities to make snow. So it's a backbone. I mean, it is neck and neck with human resources as to our most important component of our business in the winter.
Now, as an inexperienced skier versus someone who does it all the time, would I notice the difference between man-made snow and regular snow?
The crystal is actually a bit rounder, if you will, more square, as another way it's described. So it's not the traditional visualization of a snowflake that we all made in grade school when we cut out the paper with the scissors, all those geometric patterns. But it is still very skiable. If snow is being made properly and at cold temperatures, you'd be hard pressed to notice the difference when it's all made, pushed out, and groomed. I defy many people to know. What it does do is it actually doesn't melt as fast, we believe, and that's the common wisdom, when it rains. And so you tend to get a longer lasting surface out of it, is the common wisdom. I have yet to prove that or seen it proved, but the snow definitely does seem to last longer. You can tell where the man-made snow is at any ski area.
You've also touched, Paul, and thank you for educating us. I didn't really understand the process till you explained it, and I'm sure others didn't as well, and I really appreciate that. You mentioned before, when we first started talking, that 97% now wear a helmet. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to talk about safety. So every season, we seem to hear about some tragic accident on the hill. Somebody hits their head on a tree, on a rock, or just something unexpectedly happens. And there's some sort of, life-changing, event, And how has safety changed on the snow hills? I know we've got, in the next few weeks, kids are going to be going out on the hills. It's part of the school program. We got parents who are kind of worried about it. Are our hills safe? Are these events or are these situations that are happening? Is there some other factor to them that we can be aware of? Or
I think that the biggest thing that would fall into the safety is skiing is a sport that carries with it an inherent risk, much like any other sport, snowboarding, cross country as well. Operators do their best to manage the risk where they can, but you cannot remove that risk in its entirety. I always believe that the best defense in this case, to use what currently is happening in the world of sport, which is football, the best defense is always a good offense. And that means being prepared and skiing within your limits, following something that we call the Alpine Responsibility Code. Because as a individual in this sport, you actually have quite a bit of control over your own safety. You have the ability to control speed, to keep your head up, your eyes open, watch for individuals who may be below you on the slope and going to intersect your path. All of those things combine to help make skiing much safer. Certainly, we've had a number of incidents publicized over the last number of years dealing with avalanche, and unfortunately, we just lost 2 police officers in the mountains outside of Nelson, British Columbia. They were off duty, but that doesn't change the fact that we lost them. Getting out and being even more adventurous requires a certain amount of training, knowledge, preparation. And I think the one thing that I can say that we've seen in our industry is an increasing desire to be in the backcountry, whether that's on skis or snowboards or even snowshoes or snowmobiles. And I would heartily recommend that anybody considering that and it is it's very fun, and it's an incredibly moving experience. Get some training. Avalanche safety courses, AST 1 and 2, absolutely the thing to do. And I think that ties all the way back into my primary message is be informed. Those parents that are letting their kids go out on school trips, they will, by and large, they will have an incredible time and a life-changing experience. My entire career is the product of a grade 7 school trip with the gang, and literally changed my life. Allowed me to do something that, in those days, I think our parents had the idea of careers we were going to do. I don't think they ever thought that president of the Canadian Ski Council was what was going to happen from this skiing addiction. But, well, there you go, Mom and Dad. I guess I made it. So,
all from a school trip. So parents,
all from a school trip.
Yeah. Look, we've talked about weather and a few other elements here. In terms of how the ski industry has changed and safety and snowmaking. What is our biggest challenge that is facing skiing and snowboarding, the industry, outside of all of those things, outside of weather?
You mean what keeps us all up at night as associations and operators?
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's the human capital side of our business. We are highly seasonal businesses. Attracting and retaining great people was always a problem pre-COVID. I know that many, if not all, industries right now have been talking about the labor challenges, and we certainly are doing that as well. What we need to recognize is that the institutional knowledge that's contained in a great many aging individuals is now getting to the point where many of our senior people are starting to consider retirement. They're moving on, and I think attracting new people that have different perspectives, that have different shared experiences of being Canadian are important to us, and that's one of the reasons we've really spent a number of years sort of doubling down, if you will, on diversity and equality and inclusion. We recognize that back when we started tracking these numbers, we were a very tiny percentage of visible minorities on our slopes, a relatively imbalanced female participation. When I joined the resort side of the business, I think we were sitting around 8% visible minorities, and at least we were tracking it. We still have historically always been about 62 to 66% male on the slopes. That's a real challenge for us because every one of those people that come to our ski hills are the most likely targets to become managers, vice presidents, executive owners, etc., of future ski areas, and we can't ignore that. So that's what keeps us up at night. I'm glad to say that we're slowly changing the face of skiing. We're certifying a lot more instructors and a lot more instructors who look like our major cities, and that's great. You go to ski areas all across Canada this year, you see a great number of people and almost an even balance right now, according to our latest research, of male-female participation. Our participation rate for visible minorities in Canada is 16%, which is enormous growth over the last number of years. That's great. We're still not there because, as you know, the country as a whole is probably 22 to 23% visible minority right now. But our major centers, our major population centers are far and away ahead of that. So I get excited when I see people out returning to skiing, starting to ski, who are just they look and they are Canadians, and I think that's the biggest thing we can do.
Now, Paul, is that because there was a perception of what a skier should be? Is that the challenge you had to overcome there?
Yeah, our research indicated there were a number of barriers, not the least of which is the perception. I hope I'm not going to offend anybody, but by calling it an old white man's sport, and I am one. So I don't think I'm offended because it's true. And we had an elitist, and more importantly, I think an extreme perception that was forced on us by the way that we marketed our sport as deep snow, deep powder, heli skiing, throw yourself off a cliff,
extreme,
jump this, extreme, exactly.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the late 80s and 90s, we built our sport, continued to build our sport on the back of that. Wow, aren't we dangerous? Aren't we wonderful? In truth, skiing and snowboarding is really just a great pastime, a social pastime that people can jump into with friends and family. I know I'm biased. I'm a product of this. My daughter, who's turned 21 a month or so ago, she and I have a great father and daughter relationship. But we do it because we skied together. It was a family thing. My wife is not a great skier, but I can tell you that we love our family ski trips. Lynn goes one way, Haley and I go through the trees, and Haley's probably a better skier than I am, thanks to 10 plus years of lessons. But we all meet at the bottom and share our stories and have a hot chocolate, and it's a bonding thing, and it's something that I've done with my personal friends, and it's something that I continue to do with my family and friends now. So it's that sport of a lifetime is just that. It's a sport of a lifetime, not something that you need to go steep and deep every day.
So I got to ask you a question. Maybe if you don't know the answer, that's okay. But you reminded me of the family. One time, our family, we were up at Blue Mountain, and we didn't go there. We hadn't gone there to go skiing. There was just a whole bunch of other events happening. There was a cabin, and then we came across this pamphlet. Oh, hey, there's skiing lessons for kids. Bring them out. And so our son was quite young then. So all right, well let's go try. Maybe he'll like it. And so they put him on skis, and there's a little hill there, but they don't give him any poles, and they're teaching him how to ski without poles. That's how he started. Is there a reason you start without poles?
Yes, because poles get in the way of teaching, and they are tiny little spears to instructors. Yeah, it's funny. I was just talking to this about my daughter over the holidays. We were laughing because there was a girl on the chairlift with us who was giving her parents a little bit of, shall we say, attitude about not having poles. And I said, I went through this with my daughter. When do I get poles? When do I get poles? When do I get poles? Then she got poles. She's like, I don't want poles. Honestly, if we could reinvent this sport, I think we'd try to do away with poles. But yeah, it's simply kids trip over them, follow them, use them as little swords. It's just not productive. It actually comes down to them being able to focus on their body position and the ability to, you might have noticed that in many cases, the instructor will ask them, put your hands on your knees. That helps
Yes.
them weight forward and begin to, rather than standing way back or sitting back, as we say, it brings their weight forward and allows them to actually snowplow efficiently and safely. So there's many different reasons.
I do remember watching, and in the short, half hour of instruction that he received, we probably thought he was going to be a skiing champion, because I was like, wow, look how well you're doing already, right?
Great.
Right? Anyways, look, you just to switch gears, you mentioned the pandemic a few times too, but your numbers went up, right?
Yeah.
Post pandemic.
Yep. During the pandemic, it's quite fantastic what has occurred. I mean, I think being an Ontario resident, we both can commiserate on the fact of how much was closed during the winter of 2021, 2020 through 2021 early. Let's not go into politics, because that's not really a thing we want to do. But the net is that across the country, we've never seen such a flood of people wanting to be outdoors. It's not just skiing and snowboarding that benefited. Snowshoeing, cross country was part of it. Just simple hiking, walking, being outside. We needed that relief. If you think back to, I don't like to think back to those days, although I guess you should every once in a while. But they were some pretty horrific days and some pretty scary times for your family, for elderly. I think we did as well as we could. What happened in the second year was phenomenal, when people realized that there were these ways to be outside that were fun, interesting, that didn't necessarily have to be all too expensive as well. That, there are many great ski experiences for every destination class ski area, and those are the ski areas that we would call, the Whistler Blackcombs of the world, and all of our large skiers that welcome people from around the world. For every one of those, there are a plethora of individual family-run ski areas that you can go to and have a good time for a lot less. And that's a great place to learn. Here in the ski industry, we have something we call the breeder, feeder, leader system. And the idea is simply the breeder skiers, the small ones, are able to be the place where someone starts. The feeders, as you can imagine, are a little bit of both. They start skiers, but they tend to feed. They're the next step as you go up. And then there's the leaders, and those destination class ski areas are often the ones that we place within the leader category. Not to say that they're not doing their level best to grow the sport through beginners and providing great experiences. It just so happens that these small skiers are able to cater to that starting experience. I mean, we have so many of them around the Toronto area, either owned by the city in what we call the 400 or the 401 belt, from Oshawa all the way to London. Just north of there, there's a huge amount of opportunity to go and just try it.
Yeah, during those times, Paul, it seems like some of us rediscovered how to make bread. Some of us rediscovered or learned how to play instruments, and some of us discovered skiing and snowboarding. So there wasn't a lot of positive things when we think back, and there wasn't a lot of positive things about that whole, and you said horrific experience, but then there are some positive things like this, that, we reconnected with the outdoors in a lot of different ways, and skiing and snowboarding was one of those ways. You have a website, it's skicanada.org, but that's not the only website. You also have another one called Go Skiing, Go Snowboarding. And I'm going to put those both in the show notes. From an education perspective, I think that's the second one is built from that. Tell us a little bit about why the people who are new to the sport may want to go to that Go Skiing, Go Snowboarding site.
Yeah, goskiingosnowboarding.ca is the site. It's the result of quite a bit of research that we've done around the barriers to entry to our sport. We are not an easy sport to pick up. We identified some of the challenges with our extreme nature and our old white man sport conversation, but there are also a lot of people who just don't like to look foolish when they show up at the ski hill. Here I am in the parking lot. Where do I go? What do I do? How do I carry these darn things? Why do I have to put these things on my feet? There's all this. There is a lot of angst around looking a little bit different and a little bit unsure of yourself. And so we created Go Skiing, Go Snowboarding, the website and the whole program, to provide resources to individuals so that they knew what to expect
when they showed up at a ski hill. There are many other sports that do these initial programs. We felt that it was time that we had ours, and provided information in an unbiased way that doesn't reference any ski area, doesn't promote one over the other, doesn't necessarily promote skiing over snowboarding. From our world, a skier is a snowboarder. I say skier a lot. I do both, and I'm a Nordic skier. But the net is it's important for people to have that education and that welcome, and that's one of the reasons we created that sport that site rather was to give that handshake as you go into our sport. And we followed it up with something called Never Ever Day, which really is the ultimate sample. It's a $25 lift ticket, lesson, and rental day on the hill that's available at many skiers across Canada. That idea was to take the handshake and the knowledge and say, okay, well, come and give us a try, and we're going to put our best foot forward and let you decide. And I think what we've seen is that program has been very, very popular, to the point where we believe we'll hit probably 15,000 lessons across Canada this year. We're certainly moving through our inventory pretty briskly, and are excited. We're excited to have 15,000 new people who are going to try the sport. Sounds like small potatoes, but I think it's a great starting point for our industry.
So for folks who do go to that site, when you hit the site, along the bottom of the page, there's a banner. It says Never Ever Days, beginner skier and snowboard packages for $25. That's what you're referencing, right?
Yep. That's the next step.
And the site, I will say this, if you think you don't see yourself as a skier or a snowboarder, when you go to that site, it is welcoming in the fact that you just might see yourself. The representation is present in the site, and it is definitely a site that looks welcoming to all. So we want to encourage folks to check it out, and I'll put it in the notes, Paul.
Please do. Spread the word, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is exciting. So I appreciate the ski report, the tremendous amount of education that you've given us here. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with before, I let you get back to your support, your development work, your travels across Canada? Is there anything
catching
else,
a plane tomorrow. Yay.
You're catching a plane. You're not going cross country on skis, right?
No, that might be a step too far, although someone's going to suggest that one day. No, honestly, I really appreciate the time to be here with you on the podcast. We don't often get a chance to have in-depth conversation. From my perspective, it's easy to get a bit jaded and realize that and think, well, we're doing it all. And then, I was just out on the hill, as I said, here just south of Montreal, a place called Bromont, and there was a chap beside me on the lift who's obviously starting out, and I got into a conversation with him, and this man is coming back to skiing after a 7-year layoff, and his attitude was, I established my business. I live here now full time in Canada, in Montreal. I need to be a skier again. It's part of winter, and I almost couldn't say it better any other way. He hit every note. I just asked him to wear a helmet out there, and he readily agreed that he would wear a helmet next time. So that's great.
Bringing us back to skiing, that is Paul Pinchbeck, CEO of the Canadian Ski Council, with your Canadian skiing and snowboarding update. If you're in Canada, enjoy the slopes. And if you're not, come to Canada and check out the Ski Council site for all your updates. I'll have all of Paul's website and ski contact information in the show notes. Thank you so much again, Paul. Take care.
Guido, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best with your work.
Thank you. Hey, that was awesome. We learned a lot about skiing and snowboarding and access to information there, and what things are going on and how exciting it is here in Canada for that industry. Now, in our last show, last month, we talked about another industry, and that's the auto insurance industry. And our guest on that episode talked about her experience with Intact Insurance and how many delays that she had, how they lost her car, how the car got crushed. There's a whole segment on that, just that portion. But I have there's a part 2, and this is an experience here in Ontario, again, with Intact Insurance, and we start to see some of the same patterns, some of the same challenges. So let's listen to that story as we learn more about the auto insurance industry. Having insurance on your car is required by law. The benefit of having insurance is that should an unexpected event happen, it can help offset costs. While it is a mandatory cost of vehicle ownership, there must be a realized value for consumers that extends beyond a monetary transaction when assistance is needed. That value can come in many forms, including empathy, direction, support, communication, transparency, timeliness, integrity, and so on. Intact Insurance demonstrated very few, if any, of those values in a case that started on October 29, 2022, and reached conclusion on January 17, 2023. This Intact Insurance experience showed it is far from intact. On October 29th, Joseph was helping his dad bring a second vehicle to the mechanic for repair. He watched his dad make a left turn into the mechanic's parking lot. A moment later, he made the same turn, but would never fully complete the forward progression into the lot. An oncoming car making an aggressive late lane change would crash the corner of his driver's side bumper into Joseph's passenger side, pushing the vehicle sideways and bringing traffic to a standstill as both vehicles were immobilized in the accident. After the flurry of tow trucks swooned in, neck twisters slowed down traffic, the police took statements, and calls were made to insurance companies, no one would have imagined that Joseph's car would sit at a body repair shop untouched for the next 3 weeks. No one would have imagined that Bel Air Direct Insurance, who is a subsidiary of Intact Insurance, would mishandle opening a claim on the day of the accident. No one also would have imagined that the initial adjuster would disappear after nearly 4 weeks of customer evasiveness and lack of transparency on the claim's progress or car's whereabouts. It would be unfathomable to think that the next contact would be from a second adjuster, leaving an at-fault lost voicemail, then become unavailable. A return call to him yielded a voicemail greeting message. "Hi, this is Harold. Sorry, I'm unable to answer your call at the moment. I am in the office from 8:30 to 4:30. I'll be unavailable to answer any calls from 8:30 to 9:30. I take lunch from 12:30 to 1:30. I'll be unavailable from 2:30 to 4:30. So please, leave your name, number, claim number, and detailed message, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you." Harold's soon as possible really meant never. No one would have imagined that the claim would need to be escalated to 3 additional managers after more than 24 voicemail and emails were sent, and a dozen more phone calls to the Bel Air Direct General Assistance line were made over the course of 3 months. In fact, it might be hard for anyone to believe that without those escalations, that Intact Insurance didn't want to refund the 11 months and 29 days remaining on a policy for a car that hadn't been on the road since the first day of the policy because of the accident. It might even be hard to understand why Intact Insurance would process a policy a few days before the accident where 2 of the 3 vehicles had accident forgiveness, but the one in the accident didn't. All those things seem, well, unimaginable. All of them, however, are indeed fact. While all of these delays in communication, failures in transparency, and mishandled timelines ensued, the stuff in between caused a family tremendous amount of stress that Intact Insurance didn't have the capacity or maturity to know and understand. The stuff in between included things like trying to understand FDR, fault determination rules, providing evidence to support their case, waiting for evidence from the other party that would never come, or even not knowing week to week what the next step was to help resolve the finances or vehicle availability. The stuff in between also included an arrogant Intact Insurance online help resource that through Twitter
proved to be more obstinate, staunch, and outdated by today's standards for quality customer experience. In fact, they dismissed some and even blocked others. The stuff in between is what should bring the customer and the service provider together, not drive them further apart. Bel-Air Direct is the company that advertises, "We're committed to providing you with exceptional service and we value your feedback. If you're not satisfied with the service you received, our complaint handling protocol will ensure that your concerns are handled fairly and efficiently." Just because a company has a complaint handling process, it doesn't mean it should do its darndest to have customers use it. The good news is that it did come to conclusion, eventually, finally, after almost 3 months. Joseph's case was thrown out in court as the prosecutor didn't have any evidence to proceed with the case. The reporting policeman didn't show up. The other party in the accident, who had a dash cam, didn't submit any evidence. After being escalated to a special department for claims, the car was deemed a loss, and through some negotiating and providing recent repair receipts, Joseph recouped almost fair market value for the car. The first adjuster was never heard from again. Harold, the second adjuster, might still be living up to his very specific voicemail schedule. Intact Insurance was unable to look past FDR 12.5, citing a left-hand turn had been initiated by Joseph, and there is nothing in the insurance fault determination rules that exonerates the person making a left-hand turn. It doesn't matter in the insurance world if the other party was speeding, made a careless lane change, or if there is even some evidence to suggest they may have intentionally caused the accident. After 4 layers of escalations, Intact Insurance refunded the policy on the car they disposed without notice. Through one of those escalations, Intact Insurance also agreed the car should have had accident forgiveness based on the policy history and that they failed to validate on renewal, although they maintain they're not obligated to ask if you want the extra coverage. It's hard to find a company who doesn't ask customers if they'd like to buy more than what they have. So that last bit is still hard to buy. Get it? Hard to buy. It's also hard to find value in this customer experience. In fact, Intact Insurance was anything but intact when it came to empathy, direction, support, communication, transparency, timeliness, or integrity. Aside from perhaps the last 1 or 2 escalation managers, this case demonstrates poor value for a poor customer experience. This is an opinion article by me, Guido Perino, of the Monthly Social Podcast. It may also be heard on the Path Radio online. So those are a couple of incredible stories that I was able to review with respect to Intact Auto Insurance. And my takeaway on these stories is this: from looking at the insurance experience with Intact, they seem like a bloated organization when it comes to hierarchy and resources. The majority of the resources that were dealt with in these stories didn't seem prepared to handle the call. They have a script. They have a set of things that they'll ask you, but they ask you over and over and over. And if you get transferred, you have to tell your story over and over and over, it sounds like. And they were not empowered at certain levels to do more than what their script allowed them to do. And so you had to get to this elite level of support within the organization to start getting some traction. They largely seemed incapable of returning phone calls. They didn't like to talk to people on the phone. You would get the occasional email. I got the impression with some of the content that they were just overwhelmed with cases and information, and they were unable to keep up. I mean, in the one story, there's one of the agents admits that they spun up a special group just to deal with the backlog. Unfortunately, the ones taking the brunt of this are the consumers, those that need the insurance, those that must have the insurance by law. And yeah, there's a path for folks to escalate and get help, but it's long and it's not easy. And it could be a dismissive path. And if you're not educated on the language, on understanding the rules, the laws, you may not get the result that you want to get. It's been said for a long time that the auto insurance industry is an industry that needs to be looked at, overhauled. And from these two experiences, I can't say I disagree. All right, we're going to close the chapter on that. We got another series coming up in either the next or the show the month after that, where we're going to look at healthcare and what's going on with healthcare, and maybe a look at why your doctors don't want you to go to clinics. More on that to come. In between shows, you can always check out guidoperino.com. I post articles and blogs there for you as well. And sometimes they get mentioned and we do a story here on the Monthly Social. If you are a first-time listener, please consider subscribing. It's free and you're here. Just click on any of the icons of wherever you'd like to get your podcast from. And if you're a returning listener, thank you for coming back. We hope to continue to have your support. Now let's turn to our music. Feature guest, Elyse Saunders, taking us out in February. Take care, folks. See you next month. Here she is with her song, Famous.
Life gave me lemon, so I'm sipping on lemonade, so sweet. Can't beat 'em. Woke up in designer sheets, low budget luxury. Can't eat, but I'm on fleek, yeah. Slipping out the back door, chased by my landlord. She's on me like paparazzi. Feeling famous in my scuffed up chucks. It's dangerous, 'cause I get what I want. Every day's a walk of fame when everybody knows your name. Who needs an A-list when I'm feeling famous? Famous. Cruising down the boulevard, movie star, fancy cards, borrowed till tomorrow. Hitting up the strip mall, knock off foot-ons, buy one, get one. I ain't paying for the lots, but man, it feels nice when my solo cups fill with Dom Perignon. Famous in my scuffed up chucks. It's dangerous, 'cause I get what I want. Every day's a walk of fame when everybody knows your name. Who needs an A-list when you're feeling famous? Famous. Hey. But you know, I know life ain't about the cloud. And I know you know it ain't much to rave about. We know we don't need our name and lights, but let's make them shine tonight. Famous in my scuffed up chucks. It's dangerous, 'cause I get what I want. Every day's a walk of fame when everybody knows your name. Who needs an A-list? Yeah, every day's a walk of fame when everybody knows your name. Who needs an A-list? What are you feeling?